Midcoast Community Council for February 5th, 2022. I think we'll go right into council members. No, we will start with public comment. Is there anyone in the public here who would like to make a comment?
You need to take attendance a roll.
Yes, we do. I have to get back into the agenda now that we had all that problem with that. So yes, please, Len, would you please call the roll?
Are we recording?
Not yet.
So let's
Let's
start
wait.
recording.
It's early morning.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Welcome to the annual planning retreat of the Midcoast Community Council for February 5th, 2022. Len, would you please call the roll?
Jill,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Michelle,
Here.
Claire,
Here.
I'm here, 7 Miro, we're all present.
Okay. I think everybody has a copy of the agenda we're going to be sticking to that as clearly as possible. We have a lot to get through this morning. If there's anybody in the audience, I guess not at the moment, but if anyone joins us who would like to have a copy of the agenda and doesn't have it, please look at the MCC website, midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. At this point, is there anyone in the community that would like to make a comment? Okay, not hearing one. I'm going back and forth on my agenda and it's not working out well. At this point, I'd like to ask council members to make a statement of up to 5 minutes in length regarding what you expect from today, what you hope for the year, any other reflections that you would like to share with us. And I think I'd like to start with Len.
Thanks, Claire. Basically, the points I want to cover relative to today is there are many groups we interact or align with, and I think we should review what those are and have clarity, and it's a number of them. Personally, my interests are specifically in the areas of the transportation with roads, trails, and the highway SR1, the wildfire and the parks. So I'm concentrating my attention relative to those particular areas. I didn't want to state a vision at this time, but I do want to see us have an effective representation of what our goals are in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Michelle.
Yeah. So I guess there are two kind of primary areas that I was focusing on when thinking about this. One is just what types of issues that we want to take on this year. What are my priorities there? And then how can the MCC be a more active and stronger presence within the community? So first, in terms of the issues, definitely continuing the work and the progress that we've made over the last year on wildfire as part of the El Granada scoping project. You know, that I'm the representative on that, and I'll continue to work on that. We've gathered all the information at this point, and over the next few months, the team will develop recommendations. And this year I want to, obviously get through that process, but then start to figure out how we're going to fund and pursue some of those recommendations to reduce the risk of wildfire on the coast. Second, for me, is the airport. It's, I know it's here and it's always been here, and I have no problem with the airport in general, but I think a lot of community members are recognizing the increased impact from things like touch and goes, both in terms of noise, and of specific interest to me is the potential for lead pollution. We've seen that in other airports in Santa Clara County, and so I would like to pursue that topic this year. And then third would be connect the coast side as that wraps up this year. We've heard from a lot of community members about specific issues in their neighborhood, both in Montera, due to the schools. I know people in my neighborhood in Silk Cove are starting to organize around traffic calming issues here. And then we have, down in Miramar with the Medio Bridge hopefully being replaced this year and the impact to traffic there. So that's another top priority for me. And then in terms of the MCC's presence in the community, I think over the last year, we've made a lot of progress in terms of improving the website and developing the quarterly newsletter. I'd like us to continue to pursue that. And I know that we have 4 council members up for reelection this year, or maybe not reelection, maybe some of us may not be running again. And so, with that many potential openings on the council, I really want to make sure that the community is aware of who we are, what we do, and that we can encourage some additional community members, maybe even a more diverse representation of the community to run.
Thank you, Michelle. Dan.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Just a quick summary of my vision, is one, the biggest is traffic, transportation, safety on the road, and preserving our country, our beautiful country road. Focusing on actual traffic fixes and not to add to any more problems, more backups, and more potential problems with some of the ideas and connect the coast side. Also lighting, I think that the council should focus on the lighting issues that are out there. Continue to see that the right trees are removed and focus on a replanting plan. Safe routes to school, I think, are very important, of course. I personally believe that education is important. As we move forward, we're going to see more and more bicycles, electric skateboards, and all this, needs to be talked about as how they can, work safely with the cars on the road, and just general safety ideas regarding that. Also, the work towards a suicide barrier. I think that whatever is planned there should be appropriate as far as visually. I'm not a fan of just a stark concrete K-rail installed and leaving it at that. That's it for now.
Thanks, Dan. Dave?
Well, my priorities for this year are pretty much what they always are. Planning, community awareness. I think we've been doing pretty well on that, although we can talk about that under some of the specifics. I know our Midcoast Council Facebook page has pretty much gone dead. We should consider whether we want to drop that, particularly given the perceptions with Facebook and the community. My strongest thing this year, I am not going to run for re-election. I am one of the 4 up. It will be 9 years for me in December, and that's enough. I'm retired. I've got a partner who's retiring, and we're probably going to travel. So I am not going to run again for the MCC. So I have a strong priority to find people that are interested in the community and serving the community. Happy to mentor anybody, happy to answer questions. And I'll probably be saying this multiple times. I'll post it on Nextdoor. We might want to consider doing something like Green Foothills did, but on a much smaller scale of just a leadership training. For what does that mean for the Midcoast? And what does it not mean? Um, I do think we might want to update some of our policies. Zoom meetings have been a strain, and we've done some things that appear arbitrary to people because they're not in any policy, they're not written down anywhere. And I personally would like us to get back to at least partially in-person meetings this year, assuming Omicron and whatever comes after it allows for it. We have the equipment, we designed the process. I'd really like to get that going again. And that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Dave. Greg,
Well, I was going to lead with the thing Dave just mentioned, because I'm aware that we have 4 people coming up for reelection. And the 3 of us who are guaranteed carryovers have been less involved in many of the essential details that the council performs. So I volunteered, and Dave and Claire know this, to back up each of them in everything they do, which is kind of appropriate because it's a vice chair role anyway. But the carryover members here have got to cover all the bases at some point, if not in primary responsibility, at least well enough to do it. And we're going to need a next generation of MCC members, and I don't consider myself one of them. You know, I may act immature, but I'm actually up there in years. And, you know, I don't think you can count on me for another term after my 4 years. I just don't know. As far as the council's mission or priorities, I don't view it as my place to say what that would be. I do have a question, and I think Michelle brought this up, about the degree to which we can be proactive as opposed to reactive. And the reason I bring this up is because in covering our infrastructure, water and sewer and the like, and, you know, and also to some degree working on the traffic and the Medio Bridge and other things, I just see a problem with sustainability. We've got a problem of growth and overpopulation. And if you followed what's gone on in the water districts all around us, the baseline is a 59% cutback in the 3rd year of a drought, assuming the Bay Delta plan is implemented. And it could be worse than that, it could be better than that, but that 59% assumes 17% additional per capita savings. So it's really a 76% cutback. And yet people still adding units like crazy. The sewer system, as I am prepared to talk about later, almost failed because Half Moon Bay flooded it with so much waste because they don't have control of their what's called I&I, infiltration and inflow of stormwater into their sewers. So we've got to rethink the SAM plant. And then we have the issue of wildfire and the fact that we keep building in the wildland urban interface. So there's all these issues of density and overpopulation putting us all at risk. And even if there is water available through desalinization and recycling, the cost is 5 to 7 or 10 times what we're paying now. And so we're going to be driven into a situation, if we don't change the laws, where the new joiners are going to make everybody pay more for water. My concern about the county is that planning is not sustainable. And if you look at the Department of Sustainability, they don't integrate all this stuff. The fact that the landfill is going to run out in the early 2030s. And it's nowhere near as integrated as it is in, say, Vermont or in Switzerland or the Scandinavian countries, where they have regional planning that doesn't just let every little water sewer agency act as a fiefdom. They actually have oversight and make sure everything works together. So, you know, I don't know where to take that. I will tell you, I think we have an emergency right now in sewer. And I do think we have a problem with evacuation on wildfire and so forth. As far as Dave's comment, I'm actually a fan of the Zoom meetings. I think they're more efficient. I think they enable us to bring people, council people and other professionals in to testify, if you will, speak at our meetings without traveling here. So, you know, a hybrid meeting at minimum needs to be preserved. But I think Zoom has been a boon. That's it. Thanks.
thanks, Greg. Jill.
Okay. Thanks, Claire. This was a very hard year. First of all, it was my first year on the MCC, so I really didn't know what to expect. And thank you, Dave, for posting on Nextdoor. That's how I got involved and ran for election. I went back to my original candidate statement to try and figure out what my priorities were. So I don't know, Greg, you remember doing your candidate statement, but I went back and picked mine up. And the things that I wrote about were promoting beneficial development with an eye towards preservation of a rural small town character, protecting agricultural lands, protecting commercial fishing, natural environment, green belt, coastal protections with the local coastal program and the Midcoast land use plan. And I realized this year I did not learn as much as I wanted to about how the County of San Mateo planning and building works. And I would like to learn more this year, and I would like to be on the committee that reviews building and planning applications. I would like to do site visits and then help the others to submit comments back. I think I can learn a lot from that. And I've been doing site visits for 20 years and I read construction plans all the time. I know how to read permits and interpret them. So that's something I would like to do in 2022. I also read in my candidate statement that I wanted to hear all views from citizens of Monterey, Moss Beach, Princeton, Miramar, and El Granada, not just emails. And I concur with Dave. It's very hard not to be in person with people and talk with them. I would love to go to the post office and just sit at a table and chat with people as they walk by. I would love to have our little office at the airport, open and people could come by. I would love that. It's just not in the picture right now, but I hope one day we can move towards that. And the other thing is I like the idea of having a mentorship program to encourage other people to run for the MCC and to tell people what it's about, and maybe get a representative from each of these coastal towns. So mentorship program, I would be interested in developing that, maybe visiting schools or colleges or whatever to try and speak on it, or even producing a pamphlet about MCC and distributing that. Let's see. I agree with Greg that the three of us, Greg, myself, and Dan, need to learn about what everyone else is doing in case they don't come back. Especially with Dave running Zoom, somebody's got to know how to do that because he's leaving. I would like to get some young people to help out. I'd like to have young people help out with doing research, maybe help Len with the minutes. That's easy to do. Or help Greg and Claire with planning or outreach. The more people we can get involved, the more education we can give to the community, and then they can educate us as well. The last thing is I would love to have a strong relationship with the next Board of Supervisor. And I think we should start now by planning a Board of Supervisors candidate forum for the Coastsiders. The elections in May, I believe, or is it June?
November. Oh, primary.
Yeah. So there's 4 candidates running, and they don't.
I
think
hear
that-
June. I heard June.
It's November.
Oh, is it? Well, they thought
Primary.
they wouldn't get a majority in the first one, so that it would be pushed to November.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I would love to have a candidate forum produced by the MCC, and that's it. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. I am eating my breakfast and I probably timed this poorly. But I was thinking about not just what I specifically want the MCC to be involved in this year, because everybody's really good on that and I can add in what I need to add in. In terms of the Board of Supervisors, yes, Jill, I agree 100%. We're limited in what we can do in terms of sponsoring forums because we can't take positions, and we we could talk about that, but I think there may be ways we can get maybe another agency to sponsor it for us or something. We can talk about it, but I think it's a
We've done
great,
that historically with the League of Women Voters, almost every election.
yeah. So we may be able to do that, but so anyway, when I was thinking about all this, I was thinking like Jill, back to my original candidate for statement. And first of all, don't write all four of us off. I don't know how many of us are going to run. I don't know if I'm going to run, but some of us may still be here. But I definitely agree. This is my biggest reason for being chair this year is because it's possible that we won't be here. And even if we are here, it's time for other people to set some direction and to know how to do it. So I was thinking back to my original candidate statement, and it was very similar to Jill's. And I really thought I knew what I wanted to do. I thought I knew what the important things that needed to happen were. I had no idea how to do it. And I'm thinking, what have I done since then in terms of how have I learned things? I've been secretary twice. I think you learn more from being secretary than anything else, more than being chair, more than anything, because you have to pay attention to the exact process of how everything comes together, who says what, where the different points of view are, how they resolve themselves. I would definitely recommend that people consider being secretary. I've been chair twice. The first time I was chair, I think I started out at least being too laissez-faire. I kind of figured that everybody kind of knew what they were doing. Everything would fall into place. I didn't need to do anything. That's not true. This year, I realized that I have to set the tone. I have to make sure that things actually happen cohesively. What I really want to do this year myself is to make sure that everybody who wants to do something has a chance to do it. Everybody has a chance to pursue what their passions are. And yet that we present ourselves as a united body, one that while we may have divisions inside in terms of priorities or methods or whatever, that we don't waste our time and our energy on small details and save our time and energy to really interact with the community and really make some differences. I would like to have enough internal direction and cohesion that we can be effective on the outside. I'd like to have enough engagement and energy from the members that our energy and engagement spark energy and engagement from the community, rather than us just solving problem after problem, but to have a real synergy between the council and the community, where there's a flow of interests and energy. I sent out the thing about priorities and not priorities, about procedures and policies. And I know that there's going to be a lot of disagreement, and I don't even necessarily want all those things that are on that list, but I really want us to have enough procedures and policies in place that we don't spend a lot of time nitpicking or dividing ourselves into one camp or another about how we're going to do things. I'd like to have everything set clearly enough that we can put our energy into doing things. The only other thing I had to mention in terms of practicalities was finances. We had saved money to develop the website, and we didn't need to spend as much as we thought we would. We have what I consider a fair chunk of money. And I would like for us to think about how we might want to spend it. I'd also like to talk about, I would go back for 1 second to other things that made me learn about how the MCC works. Not only being chair and being secretary, but Lisa and Dave have taught me immensely. Both of them have been very patient and have told me, what you can actually do and what you can't actually do, and who you can do it with and why. And unless you know all that stuff, you're not going to be effective. I've also had a fairly deep liaison with the Half Moon Bay government, which has, I think, helped the MCC and has helped me understand more about how governments work locally. And I was a county employee for about 4 of my 6 years on the council. part-time and not in direct government, but still I got an insight as to how the county works. So I feel like I'm in a good position this year to tell people, look, you can do anything you want, but you do have to learn. And hopefully I can help people learn. That's what I've got to say. Okay. Now we can get into the real meat of this. We do have that priority list, which is attached to the agenda, and hopefully everybody has that. What we've traditionally done with this is to go through the list and talk about each of the items and see, did we achieve anything? Are we happy with what we did? Is there more to do? If so, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to divide up responsibilities and strategies? And then if we've already finished with that topic, or we're not interested in it anymore, then we just take it off the list. So I am having trouble because I've had trouble getting into this agenda thing. But let me go back to the webpage. Okay. So unless anybody objects, why don't we go down this?
Point of clarification. Are we talking about the priorities list or the list of tasks?
No,
and
we're talking about
assignments?
priorities. And I think that's we've got a little bit of extra time at this point. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. If we need to take more time on this and getting it really clear as to what we are interested in doing this year, I think that's fine. But we're on the thing that's entitled Annual Priorities and Major Topics. So the first one really is a major topic. And Michelle, Len, and Greg have been on that committee, if you want to call it a committee. And it's certainly I think I'll let Michelle talk about that, since you have been the representative to the scoping project. Maybe you can say where you think this is, and then maybe Len and Greg could also put in their perspectives.
Sure. So yeah, the scoping project was scheduled to run from about October through April. I think we'll probably see final recommendations in April or May. Right now, we just finished the data collection phase. And so Panorama, the agency that's selected to actually do the work, has been collecting data. We had the listening session in January, and we have another meeting of the group of representatives, including myself and members from Parks, Fire, different fire agencies, Supervisor Horsley's office, and then a couple community members who have been added. Our next meeting about that is next Friday. And that's just to kind of review the data that has been gathered at a high level, not the actual details of the data, but just what came in and what was collected, and then talk about next steps. So I'm really, I think by April or May, we will have a report, and then it will be presented, the data, the findings will be presented to the community, and we'll have them come and present at an MCC meeting. At that point, it will be not a clear directive on what needs to happen, but as they're calling it, a suite of recommendations of what could be done, what the county and RCD could pursue in order to reduce the threat of wildfire on the coast. At that point, nothing will have been funded other than the initial study. So there will be hopefully some clear next steps, and we can discuss priorities and what we want to pursue, and try to get funding from the county for it to start taking on some of the projects. So I think that's going to be, after April or May, the focus will really shift from what can we do to like, let's start doing what we need to do.
Do you think that that's going to be clear enough at the end of April or May that we have specific things we want to add to our list of actions, results, and hopes right now, or do we need to wait for that?
I don't think we really know. make sure we have some ideas, and we have our wildfire issues list, which is now, it's up to date on the wildfire page of the website. So we could look at that. I mean, some of the issues on that issues list are outside of the scope of the scoping project because they're not in El Granada proper, or they're just like other
Claire?
secondary actions that we could take. But yeah, I mean, there are specific, let me finish. There are specific things on that list that we, yeah, I don't know if you want to go into detail with that right now, or if you want to do that at a future meeting.
Well, I did want Len and Greg to be part of this
I think Greg raised his hand.
initial presentation of this.
Both of us
topic.
have
And I
our
know
hands
that
up.
you're both chomping at the bit. I was going to get to both of you. Len, why don't we go with, could you talk
Well,
about,
go Greg first. He was up first.
pardon me?
Let Greg go first. He was up.
Okay, I
first.
heard you first.
Yeah, I was
That's-
just going to ask Michelle, and the council what notes I should take on this document in this meeting. In the past, I've seen versions of this that included both accomplishments for a year and plans for the next year. So I just wanted to know, I mean, right now I'm coloring in blue the stuff that I think is a hope to be done in 2022. And I just want to know, what else should I be writing on this list for hopes for 2022, things we want to get involved in and try to accomplish?
That's
my
what I was
question.
going to ask. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, you're asking me
So
about
maybe
that?
Len.
Or-
I'm asking Greg and Len what their hopes are. And what else they wanted to add to what Michelle said. And then
Okay,
we'll
well,
ask
my
everybody.
hope would be that the county wildfire coordinator turns into a permanent governance position with some governance structure to begin to address the issues that we're going to, I hope, be substantiating in the wildfire scoping project. You know, and then there's of course the question of funding, which the MCC really doesn't have any authority to do anything about, but I think it's all going to start with a funding strategy for whatever we want to do. So I would say put somebody in charge and start getting some money.
So there's one level of hopes and expectations that the MCC can actually do. There's another level of things we can advocate for. So you're suggesting that we can advocate for a permanent position for funding. Okay.
Permanent position and funding. Yes. Not funding just for the position, but funding for the actions that come out of the scoping project. And I'm sure RCD is all over this. I mean, I'm sure they understand this.
So we
that.
can advocate. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was just gonna say, I don't know that we know that that person who was hired on a short-term or a long-term basis. I know that the funding is 1 year's worth, 1 year of funding that was earned through that grant. But I think we should probably check with Supervisor Horsley's office to see if that person was hired on a short-term basis. I got more of the impression that they hired a new role and they'll figure out how to fund it next year out of county's budget.
But this is a topic that the MCC should stay on top of. Is that what you're saying? Both of you?
I am.
Len?
Yeah.
I don't want to neglect you.
Well, thank you. I feel when we talk about fire, it's a very large issue, and we're really not taking it on at the correct level. Basically, when we were organized as a committee, I was to be our representative on the Fire Safe San Mateo County effort as a representative. Ultimately, Danny Turway was also appointed to it. And as of last week, there's never been a meeting, nor have we been consulted there. So, and while that has apparently a large charter in some sense, it hasn't yet engaged the community, and particularly our region. So I have a concern about that in terms of where that's going. Michelle, in our group, took the lead on the RCD project. And there again, I don't really understand what its scope is. In fact, they really have quite a bit of latitude in terms of what they bring forward. Is it going to be really a hard focus on 5 years, or are they going to provide a framework that looks at a much larger ask for a larger period of time? And then there are other areas, particularly the fire marshals, to inspect all of the houses in the WUI, which are barely underway. So for myself, both as a member, we'll say, of the representative of the Fire Safe San Mateo County, I'm trying to determine what it is, since it hasn't yet been active as an advisory group, and to reach out to our local fire, who are really, I think, beginning to both look at vegetation and, more importantly, the safety of homes in the area, not just those up on El Granada Boulevard, which is where there in Miramar, they concentrated their effort. So we have effort. We noted here we've hired a fire coordinator, and really, if you look at presumably what a lot of their focus would be, Greg has spoken actively in that area. So we sort of spread out our interest and focus in those areas. Overall, we're all waiting for the report back from RCD. And I believe, Michelle, and I hope you'll be able to confirm that after the meeting next Friday. But basically, they said, we've got all the information we can take in. I mean, they probably take late entries, and I have a few of those. But really, what I heard them say is we're listening. And then basically, they talked about in April, we'll be putting things forward, maybe first at a draft discussed internally, but ultimately to the community as a whole, and spoke of several weeks of interaction there. And really, when that comes, we'll have a much better idea of what they're doing and how they're trying to take it on, because there may be large gaps as well. Finally, I think we have, especially in El Granada itself, but in our area, as we all know, a high concentration of eucalyptus, and we know from estimates we've been given, it's a very large number. It exceeds anything parks can do, and it exceeds anything that even our whole community could do. So, and I'll get into this later, but we really have to re-up our effort to lobby both with our state and federal legislators. 20 years ago, when the tunnel was being built and lobbied for, we were very active, both the council and the community, with contact with those people. The first year I was chair, we had a representative from our congressman to observe the meeting. That's fallen off completely. And there again, we have new people coming into those positions, both at the state and the federal level. And talking to some of the people in government, the thing they emphasize to me is we have to lobby ourselves. Just as we recognize hearing from the people influences us, they influence us, the budget as well. So it's an area we have to give attention to and take on that we haven't been active in for some years. So that's in particular, I think it's critical in fire, but overall, as I try to say, Greg, Michelle, and I are each somewhat spread out in different areas. Michelle has a focus on the RCD effort. And I think, as she would say, we don't really know where they're coming out yet. They may not themselves, but we know that by May we will. So we have between now and then to both learn about the coordinator, see whether the Fire Safe Council itself is doing anything, and bring those all together and then back to the council. So that's what I'm looking for the three of us to do. I'm done.
Let's see if anybody else who's not on that group has something they want to add at this point.
Greg had an additional point.
Jill, Dave.
Well, I
Dave?
just wanted to jump in and clarify one thing. Essentially, what I'm hearing is, let's see what the wildfire scoping project comes up with and compare it with the wildfire issues list that we have. As a group, the MCC should have a session on this and decide what about the leftovers we want to do something about. And then, of course, decide based on the recommendations that are going to be put forward what we want to help with on the stuff they agree. So to check for any leftovers and decide if we're going to advance those. For instance, I'm thinking about the fire code, which doesn't currently allow abatement of mature eucalyptus trees.
I think that's a good way to look at filling out that form. And it accounts for the fact that we really do not know exactly what's going to happen in terms of some of the things that are still pending. I do think we also ought to take a minute before we leave this topic, and I'm not ready to leave it, to document what we have achieved this year, because we've achieved a lot. But I do want to go back to the rest of the council to see if anybody else has comments on this.
And I'll just quickly note that the updated version of the wildfire issues list does have, by issue what progress has been made to date, but it's not like a clear, I would love to have a clear summary of everything we achieved in the last year, not just on wildfire, but for the council as a whole.
Greg and Michelle, could you put maybe work together to put on that list what we have achieved this year?
Maybe all three of us?
All three of you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out. I was
Yeah.
just thinking Greg's doing the form and Michelle just mentioned
Well,
that. But no, I didn't mean to leave you
That
out.
form was a total form. It wasn't just for the RCD project. So we have to look at that right now in total. That's what Greg is saying. I hope.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything from the rest of the council at the moment, but
Because
so,
we keep talking, we should give them a real chance.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm actually waiting for a pause.
Okay.
I'm very impressed with all the work that everyone's put into this. Michelle, Len, Greg, everybody. It's a very important topic to me, but I feel like there's enough hands on deck to cover it. I'm excited to see the April report, and I will want to go over that and send my comments to Michelle and Len and Greg. It seems to me this panorama is just has a contract to do this one report, and they're not working with the county, or I'm sorry, with RCD after that unless they get another contract. So it'll be interesting to see the options they list in this report. And I agree with Len that we're going to have to lobby and advocate for ourselves, and with Michelle that we're going to have to push for funding for different options that we think would benefit our residents. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
anyone else right now?
Dan has his hand up.
Yes.
Oh, Dan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that one thing about Quarry Park is I think that we need to keep kind of open brainstorming with ideas to help get more done at the at Quarry Park, as far as removing the the low-hanging fruit, the smaller trees, and making a difference, and specifically encouraging more things to be chipped up. Maybe maybe have some area of Quarry Park to have like a mini compost operation where we can add pile wood chips for future use and path making, and ideas to get more bang for the taxpayer's dollar. Not hauling off so much, but to reuse the material that's in the park, and really come up with a plan and encourage maintenance going through, and macheting any new growth, new sprouts of trees, and really having a control plan. From what I've seen so far, just not enough has been done. There's going to be continued maintenance and needed continued costs of just basic maintenance of keeping what they've done so far. I think they need to, the parks needs to have a bigger plan on how to really make it accessible, so rangers or volunteers can get in to certain areas and just kind of control the resprouting. That's it.
Thanks.
I'll toss in one quick thing. The Quarry Park Master Plan has still not started up again. I think one of the people actively working on wildfire ought to contact parks and say the MCC is strongly interested in seeing fuel reduction be part of the master plan.
I've already been in touch with parks.
Officially as part of the council.
That's what I'm doing.
As a council action.
Oh, basically, I think Nicholas is looking to come back sometime in that March timeframe to address that.
Okay. The other thing I might add to this would be the evacuation and safety planning. That probably goes under other categories as well. But
The other part that might go with Greg is there's a large eucalyptus area in the Montera area that's been treated by the Fire Safe Council. That's somewhat open there. The other thing, learned that Fire Safe Council has really been the driver for what Caltrans does on roadside work across the whole county, including us. So those are the areas where they are active. But I would, the question, I think, since we have Danny Turway from who's local resident, really for El Granada, whether there should be someone in Montera who might be a representative of the Fire Safe Council, because they're really barely getting started in this whole area of the county, including Pacifica.
Okay. As a process thought here, Greg, you are putting this table together, right? You're doing the update for the year.
Yes, I'm wondering if it's two tables, if it's one looking back that includes the accomplishments and then another one looking forward. But right now I'm writing in blue the comments I'm hearing today in the table, and then you all can help me sort it out and pretty it up.
Okay, what I'm thinking, Dave, we've traditionally approved these at a meeting, correct?
No, it just comes out of the retreat, and it gets voted on as part of the minutes.
That's what I mean.
If it's seen as a big enough issue, then it gets attached to the minutes and it gets voted on. But historically, we haven't voted on these.
Well, I would like
Well, Lisa used to have these things established years back before I was involved. And I view it as a useful management tool to publish a formal work plan and priorities for 2022 and each year going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
That's what this retreat is for.
Yeah, I would like.
But we don't normally vote on it. So
My point is, I don't want to spend a lot of time saying, okay, Greg, write this down, write that down, use these words. I would like you to, when you finish doing this, let us all look at it, perhaps in a meeting, perhaps discuss it in a meeting. We'll decide that later. And I agree with maintaining it as a living document. But I don't want to tell you what to write down today at this meeting. I'm assuming you're going to listen closely and incorporate everything and bring it back to us later. Is that okay with you?
A point of process, if I do come up with notes following this meeting, am I allowed to send them to the council?
The goal is to the three.
Or do I give them to the secretary and the secretary includes it in
Oh.
minutes?
Well,
Yes.
just post it on the website. It's
Yeah.
part of the documents for the website.
Okay.
But you have the three of us to talk about it first.
No.
Happy to do
not
that.
for
I'll
the
sit-
chart.
What's that?
Not for Greg's chart.
Yes, that's the same one. Michelle took it and processed that to its current final form that was given to RCD, but it's still a total list that's
I think
documented.
you're
So
talking about two different things. Claire's talking about the
Yeah.
chart for the retreat. Lynn's talking about the wildfire issues list. And by the way, Lisa has her hand raised.
that's what I thought Greg was talking about.
Lisa, could you help us out?
I just wanted to say when I kept this table up, it was a working document that was presented at the retreat with, in the right-hand column, it had actions or results from the previous year. In other words, now you would have for 2021 to give you that little bit of history or anything that would help. And then it was clear what sponsors wanted to continue working on this issue. And then during the year, as actions were taken, I would add that in. And so, like I say, it was a evolving draft. And then at the end of the calendar year, I would look back and make sure it was complete for actions taken that year or results. And then once again, that would feed into the following retreat. And it seemed a useful way to have actions organized by issue, which would help then look up the chronological meetings where you have the actual letters and things that you wrote. Otherwise, you're thinking, well, when did we talk about that? And you're looking through all the agendas. So the chart would help with that as well. And I think that's all I had to say.
Could you clarify, Claire, because we were on wildfire and I thought we were closing that out. And then when Greg was talking about the list he was updating, I thought that's what he's referring to, but I think Greg what you're talking about is the update of this overall issues list that you published?
Is
Correct.
my speaker off? Okay, yeah, I'm talking about the document called Annual Priorities and Major Topics, or
Okay.
also, it also has the title MCC 2022 Work Plan Priorities. And
Gotcha.
Michelle's
So-
correct. There's a separate issue with the wildfire issues
Right,
list.
and we were on the wildfire topic. That's why it sort of morphed over. I mean, you were doing that all along, but you brought that up as I thought we were talking about wildfire, so I was confused on that point. So now it's clarified, and I also understand what Lisa described and where it fit. So Claire, maybe if you just close wildfire and then let's talk about it in that vein a little bit, because
Okay.
that's what you're trying to do now, I think.
I want to do two more things before we close it. One is I want to ask Lisa whether this should be presented to the council for some sort of approval or discussion at a meeting, or whether it should just be posted.
Well, in the past, we had never put it up for approval. It was like going through it now. And basically the exercise was, as we went through, we're working off the previous year. And so it was an issue of the council by consensus deciding, well, we're done with that issue, so it would be removed from the table. Or if a new issue was added, obviously the person who put that forward, their name would then go in the sponsor column. And so the discussion mostly was who's sponsoring which item. And, and my hope was always that that person or people would then take the responsibility to, to bring the agenda items, to do the work and bring it to the council. Otherwise, what would be the point of having it in the table? Who's going to take it? But yeah, it was never actually a vote. And even whoever name was put under sponsor was just sort of like, well, we didn't want more than 3, but it's just a discussion. Like I say, because it is a working document, or was a working document.
Okay, thank you. That helps. So we need to now decide which people are going to continue working on this. I would assume that the 3 people who have been working on it will continue. Is that correct?
I believe so.
The 3 of you are
It
willing-
is for me. I mean, I'd like to stay involved.
I think you guys have done a lot of work this year. I really commend you, and I'm glad that you're going to keep doing it. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is also big. The next one is the sewer system issues, which we might want to expand to other infrastructure issues. I'll leave that to you guys' discretion, including water.
Can I bring up one difference between this issue and what have been on past issues lists?
Yes, please.
If you look at the past issues list, they did have sort of a large grouping, and to a certain extent, those were related to functional areas, and often they aligned to parts of the county. For example, DPW versus roads, and also would include other parks, since we're largely a parks area. Right now, what Greg is doing, and I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, is to look at other agencies operationally here and decide how we want to interact with them. In general, whether it's the harbor, GCSD, Montero Water, et cetera, we have really operated at a distance. The harbor will typically come and talk to us at a retreat or meeting from time to time, but not the other departments. And so what Greg is bringing up is something that is, are we either trying to work directly with these different agencies or go to the county who we advise and talk to them about this? So he's framed it directly on Sam right now, but it obviously can get into other parts as well. So it's really a major step in a new direction, if you will. And I think we should try to understand what we think we should do, because we don't have a history here at all.
We
Could I
do
comment?
let me say one thing first. When we get into that next list about council tasks, part of the task is to prioritize, or to represent the council with other agencies. So on that list, when we look at it, there'll be Sam, for example, or the harbor, or whoever. And some people from the council will be responsible for interacting with, at least reading the agendas of those agents.
I think what Greg is doing is going beyond that he
Mhm.
really wants to take a different active role, which I think is important to consider. But I'd like him to go straight at that. Not before we were tracking what agencies did and would report back, but really not going at their operational effectiveness in direct comment.
And that's something I would like the opinion of other council members about. Greg wants to talk about it first, though.
I'm just trying to.
Well,
frame-
let's use this as an example, okay?
Yep.
Just use this as an example for a case of whether we could be more proactive or not. And I do want to acknowledge and set aside one thing Len pointed out. Last year, Michelle did an excellent slideshow with a really top-notch taxonomy of organizing issues. And unfortunately, I saw it too late. And I just went with this version of this thing. So yeah, we could improve this list as Len is suggesting. We could have better major categories and actions within subcategories. But for now, let me just point out what's going on in sewer, and you guys decide whether you think the MCC should have a role. Here are just a few issues that are going on. Montera is accepting infrastructure from developers and adding it into their asset base without charging those people the incremental cost of the additional infrastructure. That means all the other ratepayers are paying a burden for the new infrastructure. Either El Granada or Half Moon Bay or some combination of the two, somebody in those systems has contributed huge amounts of pollution. The technical terms are BOD and COD for the type of measurements that they do. There have been $1 million going to $2 million of a ratepayer money been spent at SAM to try and save the plant and keep it operating without polluting. And they've had a bunch of violations over the last 2 years. So there's an issue with who's creating this waste and why are we paying for what is this essentially commercial byproducts. Okay, so ratepayers again are subsidizing, and I'll say breweries, but no, there's been no direct proof yet as to exactly who's done what. But it's generally acknowledged in the industry that breweries are the primary emitters of high BOD and COD stuff. So there's an issue there. And then the last thing is we don't have enough capacity at the plant for peak storms in our current climate change era. We have enough flow for dry weather by far. We're fine. But when we get these peak storms, we almost knocked out the entire SAM plant. And it isn't the people in the north, because our pipeline can only contribute 3 million gallons per day peak flow rate. 12 million plus came from Half Moon Bay. And so the question is, what can you say to Half Moon Bay? Well, there are several things we could say to all three districts. One is we could say everybody's got to stop adding new connections until this problem's fixed. The most immediate fixes, though, would be in Half Moon Bay, which is to add some wet weather storage to handle surges so they don't overload the plant. And they don't have any capacity, whereas the agencies in the north do in the intertie pipeline system that sends the sewage south. The other thing you could say to Half Moon Bay is fix the leaks in your pipe. And that's very expensive. Wet weather storage is more cost effective, but there recently was a survey PG&E did as a result of the San Bruno explosion 10 years ago. You may remember, was it 12 years ago? They surveyed all the pipes in El Granada, as Dave pointed out to me. It was a great find. And I found out they just did Half Moon Bay. So, I think it's worth saying to Half Moon Bay, take the evidence you got from PG&E, identify your prime things and fix them. And then the last thing is, and this apparently was a county issue brought up before, a lot of the leaking into the sewers that lets storm water get into the sewers comes from homeowners' sewer laterals, the pipes that connect your building to the sewer. In Montera, they have a policy that every time they do any work on a building in an area for free, they'll fix your lateral or at least test it to make sure that it's good. Somebody tried to get this in front of LAFCO, and my understanding is the county turned it down. And the regulation would simply be every time a house is sold, the lateral has to be tested and upgraded. And that would reduce everybody's I&I a lot. But the San Mateo Association of Realtors opposed that, okay? As we're not going to increase the cost of the sale. So just to give you a flavor, that's a lot of policy issues the MCC has no authority to do anything about, but I think we at least ought to consider and advocate with the appropriate parties and agencies for what we would like to see done to protect our residents and ratepayers, and our plan. That's the
Okay.
end.
Okay, I think the crux of what Glenn is saying, as opposed to what Greg is saying, if I'm hearing both of you correctly, is how much do we want to get involved in the inner workings of another agency? At least that's part of what I think Glenn was saying.
That's
Um,
exactly it.
Okay. I personally think that we should not get into the details, at least not for the purpose of this particular list of what other agencies are doing. I think, as we did with the fire issues, we can say things that we want to advocate for as a result of what we hope they do, rather than saying what we hope they do, if you see the distinction. We're not in charge of their processes, but we do have an interest in the outcome. So if we add this sewer and perhaps infrastructure item to the list, can we do it in a way that keeps us from being involved in their process, but advocates for an outcome?
That's tricky territory.
I don't see that as tricky territory at all.
Let's talk about it.
And well, one
So,
thing I wanted to
your
say,
opinion.
and I'm not trying to shut down the discussion, but if we go to this level of discussion on everything on this list, and we haven't even asked if anybody wants any additional things on this list yet, we are going to be blowing out the new deadline before we finish this agenda item. So I think if we need really, really detailed discussions about these, then that becomes an agenda item for another meeting, not something for the retreat. But I agree the discussion of what our scope is absolutely totally reasonable for the retreat. I'm not trying to stop that one. I just want to point out that we can't really have this level of discussion on every item.
I agree with that. Just let me make the point clear. I understand exactly what Greg wants to do in the particular as well as overall. He's said enough of the particular here and other times that I know that. The overall question, though, is the one we should talk here at the retreat to know if and on what basis we want to approach other agencies.
Do we even want this on our priorities list? Can I get a sense of people as to whether we think this is something we want to put some energy into during the year?
Well, go ahead.
I think it is worthwhile. We've historically, if somebody on the council has a strong desire to do something, that's fine. This is their priority for the year. And the sewer issues are big. I'm not sure I'm completely in agreement with how Greg wants to tackle it, but until we get into it and decide that, then we're not going to know for sure. But I think it's fine for this to be on the priorities list. And I see absolutely no problems whatsoever with us talking to the other boards and agencies on the coast. I mean, we do that with Half Moon Bay. We do it with other regional bodies, and past MCC members. A good chunk of the board members on MWSD and GSP, or GCSD, excuse me, are ex-MCC members. So I don't see any problem with that. An adversarial approach would be an issue to me, but I don't think we're necessarily talking about an adversarial approach.
Well, the question I'd like to raise to Greg, let me in particular, not in general, and then I'll let you go, is you've talked about basically stopping new development connections. And are you wanting to make that as a, by the way, have you thought about it, please do it? Or in what way are you trying to frame it? It's an obvious thing that's there.
I'm going to dodge that and listen to what Claire and Dave said.
Okay.
Okay, let's go.
If we agree the sewer should be a discussion item, then we
Michelle
can
has her hand
discuss
up.
it in another meeting, right?
Michelle's had her hand up for some time now. Would you go ahead, please?
Hey, Claire. Yeah, I just wanted to say, last year at the, obviously Claire doesn't have to do it, but everything the same as I did, but I'm a little bit disappointed that last year at the retreat, we had this priorities framework, and it really organized it in terms of larger issues, as Lisa was saying, was done in the past, and then smaller areas of focus within that. I know, I sent that both to Claire and Greg, but it looks like it didn't get processed really. So I think that in terms of going through this list that Greg put together is really a small subset. It may be the most important things that we want to focus on this year, but it is a small subset of what has been on the list historically and how it's been organized. So just in terms of a process perspective, I wanted to add that. I put a link to the last year's document in the chat. And I agree with Dave that, yeah, going into details on each issue is probably not appropriate for this meeting.
I never got that, and I'm looking at
I sent it to you, but I guess I didn't. It was with a list of all the things I sent for transition, but I guess sorry, I should have more clearly called it out.
okay, and I'm looking at what's posted.
Website search didn't find it either, so it was interesting.
What was that?
Well, what I have on from chat right now says MCC retreat agenda. Is that what you are meaning for us to look at?
The slides way down, well, partway down in the slides is a priority bulleted list and then an expansion, which is a useful way of doing it, but it's much harder to read than the traditional way. And I didn't have a local copy of it. I didn't remember it from the retreat. So when Claire and Greg were asking about. Anyway, the point is that this is supposed to, as Lisa said, it's a living document. It does not have to be finalized today. The point is to get council members' priorities that we think could be actual council priorities, not just like, this is my hot issue and the council's never going to do anything about it. And I think it is pretty clear sewer is a big issue for the community. I think it's fine for the MCC to be involved with it, and we won't know for a bit how that's going to evolve, but I think that's fine.
Okay, so let's do this. We have Greg's list that he put together, and I appreciate that. For each, let's go through what he put down. Let's make sure we have people assigned to develop that particular topic throughout the year. And then take a look at what Michelle has that did not show up on this list. And if you would be willing to call those out so that we can consider those in the same way, Michelle, and add them to this list. If we agree to do that, then let's handle it that way. So is there anybody that we have agreed we're going to have sewer system issues as an interest for the year? The details will be worked out later. Who wants to be on this with Greg? Is there anybody who has an interest in that?
A point of confusion here. Greg and I were appointed to a committee with you as the third to look at bringing this as an agenda item. I think what I was trying to frame here is the general issue. I think we've done that. And I think bringing that forward as a specific item is the next productive thing to do.
But we're not going to do that here today.
No, that's what I said. We already had a committee of 3 people. Greg is working to bring it forward. I support him doing that.
Okay, we discussed doing that as an agenda item, as an interest for the year. Are the same 3 people we're going to do that? Are there other people who want to be involved in that? Okay, so
we have the agenda item, but anyway.
We may have more than one agenda item on this. So we're putting me, Len, and Greg as people who are involved in or sponsoring
The sewer issue.
Yes. Okay, moving on to
So noted.
What?
I just said so noted. I made that change.
Okay, great. Moving on to Highway 1. I presume that putting suicide barrier project here on this list is only an example of issues around Highway 1, and this topic involves all these other aspects of Highway 1 that are noted in the right-hand column, as well as others that may come up. Is that correct?
I'll just add that we agreed last year to change this topic subject to transportation.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is transportation in general, but the suicide word has to go away. Caltrans is very carefully saying this is for accidents.
They already have a project they brought to our attention. They finished the environmental review and it's ready to go forward there. We did not comment further on it, but that's a known project that's funded and underway at Caltrans.
We just want to get rid of the word suicide.
I think the question is whether it's Highway 1 or transportation more broadly, which would imply Highway 1, the internal roads, and the 2 trails that we're actively following.
Can I see there's an other transportation? It's just that this list is not organized by like high level topic. The topics that really should align with what we have on our website, and maybe the words are, I just looked at our website, still says Highway 1. So, you know, but at last year we decided that there were 6 high level topics, which were parks, planning, transportation, public works, sustainability, and community and communications. So this, to me, Highway 1 is a subset of, I guess, of transportation, and I want to look at it that way.
I personally, I'm not fond of that method, but I don't really care too much because I'm not going to be around after this year. So whatever other people want. I just went through the list, that slide deck, and I found it very hard to digest relative to this table format.
Yeah, I'm not a like strictly saying that when we need to have it in the slide deck, like, but when I sent this to Claire, I said she can do it in whatever format she wants. I just think the organization should be such that we align the topics with the website.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't find that organization easy to follow, but the council members who are going to be continuing should decide that.
I would say that since we have a chart in front of us, and I'm sorry, Michelle, I did not realize that there were slides attached to what you sent me. I thought it was about the agenda. And we couldn't find it. We looked really hard to try to find
It was
this.
also on the
couldn't
post for
find
the
it.
retreat last year, but also that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, we have a chart in front of us. I think rather than going back and making a whole new chart based on last year, although that would have been interesting and probably a good thing to do, we should just go through what Greg has. And if there's things that we need to add to it, we can add to it.
So do you want comments then about just Highway 1?
Yeah,
I'll give a quick update. In particular, I'll bring forward a letter at our next council meeting in which we explicitly say that while we have commented on Connect the Coastside, we also would like to see Connect the Coastside adopted and approved as a specific statement. Second, in trying to talk about the particulars of Highway 1, it's clear there's one set of interests that focus on Montara Moss Beach, sort of embodied in the scoping initiation project. And in the other area, you have the SHOP program is coming there, and we need to put forward particular items that we would like focused there. So basically, what I'm looking to do with the support of both Lena from the supervisor's office and Chanda is to convene a meeting with the relevant parties to look at the projects there later in the year. But in a
Can you explain explain what the scope and definition of SHOT project is?
The SHOP projects are large highway maintenance and renovation projects that Caltrans does across its whole system. And the current one on the table is one for the Highway 1 up to the airport, coming from Half Moon Bay up to the airport. And that's scheduled to go for environmental statement review in March. And it'll include various things there. That within that, you have 3 different areas that won't be addressed unless we lobby more particularly for actions, either from Caltrans or others. So that brings that sort of the nuts and bolts we need to do. And that's at, and then in Montara Moss Beach, we're looking for Chanda to keep us appraised of both where that effort is at and when there are points where we can either be more involved or come up to date.
okay. I would suggest that we keep this topic as it is, except move, take out the suicide barrier project if you want to.
Well,
That's
Already
all-
done.
project that's
All right. There's also a possibility that speed limits could be reduced through Moss Beach and Montara. There's also the Moss Beach Corridor project, which is being funded. So we could add those things if that's okay with people. And I'd like to get someone besides Len, or in addition to Len rather, on this. Is there anybody else who'd like to add their names to this particular topic?
Let me bring up a point there. So in terms of working with Caltrans, both Michelle and I now have a working relationship with them there in terms of talking to them on particulars, which is important to have. I'm probably not going to be on after this year, but certainly, and Michelle sort of can well represent the Montero Speech area in a particular sense, but I think we need another person on the council who would like to get into that loop and be recognized. Typically, that's the chair. That's how both Michelle and I sort of got into that in the first place. But once you make the connection, it continues there.
Michelle, are you willing to be on this group?
Yeah, I'm not committing to running again, but I'm committing to be on it for this year. So it actually may make sense. You know, I haven't decided one way or the other, kind of 50-50, but it may make sense for one of the three people who are definitely going to be on the council next year to join.
Okay, Dan's got his hand up. Maybe you're interested, Dan.
Yeah, I'd like to join. And I wanted to ask, since Len seems to be very knowledgeable about the, what is it, the shop project, Caltrans plans. Len, can you offer the council just a summary of what their plans are?
No, not right now.
I can point, we published documentation on it, so I'll give a link to that.
Thank you. That would be great. So Dan, you want your name added to this work group?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the Half Moon Bay Airport. I think that both Greg and Michelle have indicated some interest in that. Do you anybody want to say anything about that right now?
I would like to be on that as well.
Michelle, did you still want to be involved in this? I didn't take the liberty of
Yes,
volunteering you.
definitely. I do.
Okay, I'll add both Jill and Michelle.
Okay. And I think you're working with a community group on this as well, correct?
There is a community group of 58 or more people who have actually discussed ignoring the MCC because they don't think we'll be effective and going direct to the county. There are other people who definitely want the MCC to hold a hearing or a session on this and bring in the evidence and discuss it. So yes, we're working with a community group, but the community group may act on its own. All right, just be aware of that. The community group is mostly right now worried about touch and goes and apparently not concerned with the leaded fuel and aviation gas, for example.
Okay. So we have three people on that, Jill, Greg, and Michelle. The next gen MCC topic, I think is important. I'd rather rename it. Maybe leadership.
Claire, can I
development.
add something to the previous airport?
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
It's been it's been a regular basis that there's been a lot of low flying helicopter. And I think that should be added to the concern for the airport.
And Lisa had her hand up and I accidentally lowered it.
Lisa?
Oh, I will forward you. We had I think the MCC can be helpful on this, and there was a meeting in 2012, and there are detailed minutes there because that's exactly the thing to capture, where the then airports manager came and the CCAG guy was there, and they answered these questions. These come up every few years. We go through the same issues, and they talked about having the FHA come because they're always saying, well, you know, we can't do anything about the planes once they're in the air. But anyway, it would help if you review those minutes and get some ideas, and especially with a Zoom meeting, you can have these people come answer the questions directly. It could be very helpful for the community. That's it.
Thank you.
So can you just tell us the date of that so we can find it in 20?
On the airports page at the right bottom of there are no more columns. At the bottom, it's the link to the meeting, to the minutes is there.
Thank you.
Near the end. Thanks.
Anything else on this? Okay. Could we rename the next topic as something like leadership development?
Sure.
I think it's a great idea. I like whoever brought up the idea of maybe sponsoring some leadership training, both for the council and for the community. Jill's ideas were good. Any other thoughts about this? Anybody want to be on this? I see Dave and Greg here. I don't know for sure if both of you actually want to do this and who else would like to be involved.
Yeah. And we may be able to pull in some county assistance on this too. It's also a worthwhile time to mention that the county is doing a training for all members of all county boards and commissions in March, and we've all gotten invitations to that. And hopefully that'll be recorded, and it might be appropriate for anybody else who's interested in the MCC. We'll report on that afterwards.
Joe, would you be interested in being on that group?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Okay, good. Next thing is website. That's left over from last year. Dave, Greg, and Michelle were on that, and it's been very successful. Thank you, Lisa. Where are we with this item at this point? Is this something we want to leave on our priorities list, or something we can take off?
I'd like to have Len really address this, because I think he's the one that's most interested in additional changes, but I see he has his video off, so I'll talk until he comes back on. I think the transition to the new Squarespace 7 was great. I'm really glad it went as smoothly as it did, and I'm really glad Lisa put all that huge effort into it. I don't think at this point it makes sense to revisit the idea of transitioning to WordPress unless somebody wants to take it on as like a huge project. What I do think we're talking about, and Len, this is, I think, pretty much your item, so you can jump in whenever you want, is perhaps some more interactive stuff and perhaps some layout changes. And I personally would like to see the old search added back, if not as the only search, at least as an option, because not being able to search the PDFs is not great. And I did try and find things like Claire's slide deck with Google search, external site search, which has been my way to find things on PDFs, and it didn't find it. So some better search, I think, would be good. Anyway, Len, take on.
Well, I'd like to recharacterize that. Basically, with Michelle and Greg, I think we're more at the heart of the effort to have WordPress considered as an option. I stay in good touch with Lisa, and she had indicated an interest to move ahead to Squarespace 7 and did all of the work on that, which is an effort I appreciated. I think the question now is whether Squarespace 7 is the go-ahead platform or not. And that's really, I think, more for Michelle and Greg to speak to, as they had the interest in WordPress.
Yeah, I don't think that we need to move to WordPress anymore. I mean, I think that the new website is many times better than the previous website. And it's, I do agree with Dave. There are some functionality changes that we can do in terms of search, potentially some topic header changes or reorgs. But as a whole, I think that the new website is really nice. I do want to point out, and this is something that'll come out when we talk about the finances, is that we do still have the old website, and Lisa can probably speak more to this, but we are still paying, or at least in June we'll have to decide whether we pay for another year of the old website, because I believe some stuff is still posted over there. So that's something we need to figure out.
So it sounds as though there may be some need to keep this on our priority list just to get some of the loose ends tied up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could speak to this,
Yes, I'm sorry, Greg, you have your hand up.
I want to agree with everything Michelle said.
Okay.
We don't need to go to WordPress now. We only need to worry about incremental changes for the time being. I do think it's worthwhile to reserve money in the budget, though, for future years, because there are more things we could do, but we're not gonna, I don't think, need to address them in the short term.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank-
and there was one thing I forgot to say. We still have a hot button of, for me, of backing up the files on the website. And
I was gonna say that. I was
I
gonna
was
bring
gonna
that
work
up.
with, yeah, I forgot it too. I was gonna work with Lisa on that. And I think I'll just put an agenda item or ask for an agenda item in an upcoming agenda to appropriate money to get more storage on Google Drive under the Midcoast Community Council account and just do the backup there. Because we need the space. And no matter how we do the backup, we're going to need the space. And if some other backup decision gets made later, it'll be easy to move over Google Drive.
Okay, Lynn?
The remaining concern there is one that I have, which is not based on the structure of the website, I mean, the platform, but basically you don't have an easy way to come to the website and see what's really happening with us. And that relates in part to the tool itself, but also to we've carried forward the menu structure, which is not just something you can readily reorganize in any sense. So there are some issues of that type there that relate to ongoing use. Lisa is certainly the one most qualified to both point to some of the issues that come up when you try to do it or consider it. But I think that's still there to consider, because when you go to our homepage, you really don't get a very overall picture of it. So that's my concern.
Okay, so we've agreed we're going to keep this on the priority list for the purpose of making the types of adjustments that people are mentioning. And are we going to keep the same three people on this? The three people currently there are Dave, Greg, and Michelle. Is that?
I'd be happy to drop off if somebody else wants it. I can do the backups without being on this list.
I think it might be valuable for you to stay on it, but
I think Dave is always there this year, as am I. And Lisa is there to really contribute substance to the discussion. So, I mean, if some other person besides Dave wanted to come on in his slot, I'm fine. But in terms of what I need to contribute, I don't feel a need to be on it.
okay, I'm sure that they'll want your input, but we'll
Oh,
have,
no.
yeah.
And as I said, Lisa is always with us on that. So
I need Dave there. He's my
There you
right
go.
hand. He's my right hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
just
so
keep
we'll,
it the way it is.
we'll keep it the way it is.
Can I just
then-
to directly comment on, I'm just unclear on whether we need to renew the old version of the website, the one that comes up for renewal in June. Well, do we need?
That's
to-
Lisa's call. That's Lisa's call.
That's-
Yes, it's paid to June, and my plan in the fall was to finish all the mopping up by then so that we could let that die. And oh my goodness, it's already February. So, but that still should be the plan. And yeah, I don't see why we should need to. Has anybody else ever gone back to that old site except for me since we left it? So what I do notice, well, okay, there's details here that I can tell you, not in this discussion. That's all.
Thank you.
One question that I should like to raise, really, I guess it's website based. The blog post is our major way to interact. And basically, most people, you know, I think, Michelle, you've learned to post there, as has Greg. I think the other council members have not. And I think it's important for all council members to potentially be able to use that for posting. And so I'd like, you know, to have it more structured in the sense of, you know, that if Jill, for example, wants to post something that's go there, that you know, she would go to a person who could get it up, because I don't think it's realistic as a qualification to be on the MCC that you'd be able to do those posts. So I just want to make sure we have a provision to do that that's more recognized and streamlined.
We may want to look at that during procedure section.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Just
Can I-
as of now, Michelle, Dave, and I can all provide that service. Greg is certainly capable. So if any more, that sounds like should cover it, but however you want to do it. Basically, I think as far as Squarespace is probably the easiest to do this, but it's not that, it's not like filling out a PDF. And so I learned from the Squarespace help menus. And so I don't think it should be expected that some training would be offered to that's a bit much unless you're paying somebody to do that.
And
Should be
anybody who
considered.
wants to do it directly can get training from any of us who know how to do it. The basic posts are, 15 minutes at most, and then a couple of the interesting editing features like changing dates. But there's another item on somewhere on our list of communications, and one of them was a possibility of blogs per council member. So that would mean some other structure to the web page rather than all blog posts on the front page. And that may be part of what Len was talking about.
But I'm also
That's coming up under procedures and policies.
I understand that the point I'm making is I believe any person as they come on the council should not be told you have to learn to post on that there's a resource and we've identified them to go to, so that from day one, if they have interest, it's available as a tool. And then we'll talk about the more general issue later.
Right. And flip side is anybody who wants to on the council can post.
Okay. Moving on, the next.
I have my hand raised. Just this is an adjacent question. I'm not sure if it belongs here or somewhere else, but I had requested that we talk about the email newsletter and then the agenda postings. Claire, were you planning on covering that in procedures?
No, the email posting, what do you mean? The agenda posting? Is that what you said?
I sent you an email that said one of the things that I want to talk about at the retreat is the email newsletter.
Mhm.
There's one topic which is who's going to be the editor and things like that. Then there's another adjacent topic which is Dave and I have spoken about potentially combining the MailChimp list that we use for the newsletter with the agenda mailing list. And so I want to talk about that at the retreat. I'm just wondering where the right place is to do that.
I think this is the right place to do that. I think that's one of the things that should be on the list that we're now considering.
Okay.
Yeah, we could put this under the website. We could make another topic called communications. I don't care. But so for those of you who don't know the gory details, the agenda mailing list is a Google Groups list with, I think, currently 105 people on it. And I check that regularly. None of those emails is bouncing. Those have all been cleaned up. But when that was created, the promise was made to people that were put on it that very, very few people could see who was on it. And it wasn't to be used for anything other than agendas. So the right way to handle this, in my opinion, is decide what we want it to be. I don't think the newsletter and the agenda list should be the same list, but they could both be MailChimp, absolutely. And maybe they will be the same list, but I suspect not. Most people don't want to get all the agendas. But anyway, send out mail to the agenda list once and say, we've created this new mechanism. This list is going to go dead as of 2 months, 3 months, whatever, and then do it and be done with it. And then obviously that implies one person more than Michelle needs to be trained in how to do the MailChimp stuff.
So this item of communications involves the newsletter and involves the mailing list.
And I believe it should involve the minutes too. No, I want to raise it to discuss. I'm not saying that's, and it belongs in that type of discussion, which is, I think, later on in our list.
Yeah, I don't see minutes as a optional communications thing. The same way as
I want to make the case. I don't agree. I mean, I just want a place to mention it.
Okay. And Michelle,
multiple mailing lists that are easily managed is what that target item becomes, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And one of the things you were interested in with the newsletter topic is who is going to be the editor?
Yeah. Jill was our editor last year, and I was like the technical manager. So the person who set up the newsletter in MailChimp and like manage the list and make sure it was sent. Jill has asked if I would be the editor this year, which I'm happy to do, but I don't know that I want to do both. So, I mean, we could talk about this under task assignments because I think that that's more where it belongs, but yeah, just want to make sure we cover it.
So we are going to add communications to the master list that you're compiling, Greg. And it sounds as though Michelle definitely wants to be on that. Jill, I think, is going to be on that. And Dave?
Seems like,
Separate.
I would prefer to be a technical resource
Yeah.
and not be driving it, but yeah, I have an interest in it.
Yeah, well, Dave,
question, Michelle, are the
has a-
old newsletters posted somewhere on the website? I'm sorry to get,
No,
if they're not, I would like to see that they are.
okay.
Yeah, that's a reasonable subtopic. That's all part of communications.
Got it.
send them to me and I'll figure it out.
Okay. And then like one other tiny topic for this is that we wanted a new logo for the MCC website, and we ran a little contest in our last newsletter, but no one submitted any ideas. So I was just gonna try to do one myself. Or we could do like use Fiverr or something to get someone to design one for like $20, but just one thing I wanted to mention as part of website and communication.
Okay. So we'll add that.
I noted it.
Okay.
Did anyone go to the high school or middle school to see if the art programs were interested in having their kids do this?
No, it was only really publicized through the MCC newsletter.
Ah.
It's something we could ask Tim Fox, because he said like there's issues if a minor submits it. I think it's fine. We just have to have a release signed once. Yeah, we could either decide to run a contest again and better publicize it. That would be great, actually.
Next, somebody's still got their hand up. Lynn?
Oh, I'm sorry. That should go down.
Okay. Next topic on the list here is parks. Do we want that as a separate topic here? I think we probably do. I noticed there's nobody with their name on it.
Well, parks has a couple of different connotations. So we have the county parks, which are Pillar Point Bluff and Quarry Park. But we also have national parks, the CGNRA land, as well as state parks. Traditionally, the council has maintained contact with all of those organizations, and as recently as 4 years ago, would hold a session to bring them all together for a presentation to the MCC. Also, the county has had parks directors who would stay in touch with all of those parks organizations, but the current director really doesn't work that way. He's primarily just for the local ones. So, those are just things we have to keep in mind, because obviously we have lots of parklands in the Midcoast.
Lisa, can you add something?
Yeah, I think you really need to have parks on your priority list. And I would point out that Pillar Point Bluff has a need for a complete assessment of biological resources. It has never been done for the southern portion. The significant lack has been highlighted by the off-leash dog neg deck. This is something MCC could advocate for and offer to contribute funding for the study to emphasize its importance. This relates to when you were discussing paying me for my website efforts, and I thought, well, maybe contribution, something to do with my work on Pillar Point Bluff. But I think that's a real follow-on topic from this latest discussion about the bluff. And also the items you have listed here, the pump track is already fully permitted and ready to construct. So I don't know just what the issue would be there. And I agree, the Quarry Park master plan has been languishing for years, and this should be a priority to get that back and finished up. The consultant did a biological assessment, which the public has never seen for Quarry Park, and it was, and yet it was referenced in the off-leash dog neg deck. Also there is great interest in the master plan for the Marine Reserve and what has been done or hasn't been done to protect the resources there. There are people related to the marine mammal protection trying to get a resolution to who manages the beaches at around Pillar Point. And because people just flood the area, and who's in charge, and those people would certainly be interested in you having an agenda item on this, I think. Anyway, I just wanted to make a pitch for that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think pump track can be moved to accomplishments, and Quarry Park Master Plan is certainly was supposed to follow the Flood Park Master Plan, which was supposed to already be done and isn't. So I think we do need to keep pushing county parks on that. And the very related thing to what Lisa was just talking about is marine protected areas, of which Fitzgerald Marine Reserve is one, essentially. And that whole area of the beach is something that I've spent, I'd say 300 or 400 hours on mapping and researching and everything else. And it got referred to county managers and county council and died. So there's still a good sized sliver of that beach at what's called Mavericks Cove or Mavericks Beach, for which it is completely unclear what agency owns it.
Okay,
yeah.
So I just noted, under future items, an environmental study for Pillar Point Bluff and Marine Reserve protected areas. Did I chronicle that right?
that sounds,
Marine protected area, AKA MPA.
So Dave, and having put a lot of effort in, but not getting results besides putting it on our list, do you have any thoughts as to how to be effective there?
I think we don't necessarily need to go into that right now.
Well,
But the answer is
But
yes.
who's going to own the problem? Whose name do I put in the first column?
You can definitely put my name.
For Parks, so Dave and I were on there last year, and I'm certainly involved too, but I think one of the permanent, continuing council members should be on there as well.
I would like to be on it.
Right, and right now this gets onto the task assignments, but I'll just mention it here. I am still currently the council representative to the Quarry Park Master Plan process, and be happy to pass that over when we get to the task list if somebody else wants it.
I'd like to be on this if there's still an opening and nobody else wants it more than I do.
I have Dave, Jill, and Claire.
Okay. The next item is entitled lighting, and I think I might like to change that to maybe code enforcement or code enforcement and lighting or something like that.
Good point. Code enforcement.
I do think the fire station is sort of a dead issue in terms of dealing with the fire people, but maybe not in dealing with code people.
County planning has said, and all the way up to the Board of Supervisors, that they consider it a finished issue. So I know Dan disagrees with that. And code enforcement, I would love to see be better on the coast, but I think that fire station, since we have gotten no response from county planning, or I'm sorry, we have not gotten the desired response from county planning or the fire department. I think that issue is a dead issue as a council issue. Individuals certainly continue with it, but as a county body, for us to keep fighting the county on this when they have given us the final answer, I think we're done.
I disagree.
Do we need, or do we want to keep this as an item on the priorities list?
Yes.
I think overall, yes. I just meant specifically the fire station.
Yeah, I would say yes also, because lighting in general is becoming bothersome.
Can we change it to lighting and code enforcement?
Yes.
Yeah, I did. I changed it to code enforcement with a subtopic of lighting.
Okay, who else? Does Jill and Dan still want to be the people on this?
I disagree with Dave on that the fire station is a dead issue. For the council to just fold and accept that planning cannot enforce their own rules, I think that is not good for the whole coast side.
I agree with you, Dan. It's just as a county body, given the county's unified response, I don't see where the council can take this as the
Well-
council.
Well, by accepting it, it's just not good. It sounds like some people want to just accept that they don't have to follow their own rules.
I think if we put an emphasis by putting it on our priorities list for code enforcement, that gives us an avenue to continue to pursue similar issues.
Yes.
The avenue we're doing right now is not getting us anywhere. So, and we're certainly happy to have you continue to do this as an individual, Dan, and to look at other ways to get to it. But
But I think the council should continue to look at it and look for other avenues.
okay. So who would like to be responsible for that particular area of interest?
Jill?
Overall lighting,
Jill? No, code enforcement and lighting. Jill?
Yes.
Okay.
May I, before you close that out,
Mm.
may I ask for you to consider the harbor master plan? And this is in relation to lighting. I don't know if you have commented or had any presentations or given your input to the harbor district with their master plan, but this would be the time to talk about lighting.
Okay. So add that to that topic. And
Just
Jill,
put
I
my
guess
name
for
on
right now
that.
you'll coordinate this.
Mhm.
I'd be happy to help if you like.
Okay.
You want Claire, Dan, Jill and Claire, or Jill, Dan and Claire?
Yes.
Dan hasn't spoken up on this.
yes.
You
Yes.
did? Okay. Okay, good. Other transportation, we want a separate category for other transportation. We have one for Highway 1. But this probably makes sense.
Yeah, you might add Samtrans on this list as well, I think. So basically, I see this category as transportation, not Caltrans.
Mhm.
The other item
Well-
is Caltrans primarily. This item is primarily not Caltrans.
I believe they belong all together because Caltrans manages Highway 1, which is our main road. And also on the county side, it's Quavo, the person that certainly currently does it, works well with Caltrans as well, but I really think it's all part of a common issue.
I agree.
I'm looking
Well,
at
I'm
it.
happy to reformat the list. I'm happy to
So-
reformat it. And put them together.
Before you do
under
that, so
transportation.
the reason I agree with this being separate is they're completely different processes, different groups, different county bodies, regional bodies involved. So, I mean, you can put them both under transportation, but they're very different items with very different interests. So I personally would just keep them two separate items. They're not exclusionary. It doesn't mean you can't go back and forth, but in terms of priorities, they feel very different to me.
Okay, we disagree. That's fine.
So we're leaving this as an additional topic?
Well, put my name there, and then I'm sure other people may want to be there too, so.
I'm
I
interested
think you
in
have one broader topic and then you have different subsets. Like I'm particularly interested in safe routes to school, but I don't necessarily, and then I know the Connect Coastside issue up above, but I don't there's transportation as a whole and then there's a lot of different subsets of it.
Well, the way I envision this, the people who are signing up to sort of spearhead this particular topic, that's what they're doing. They're sort of organizing it. But if there's a specific agenda topic that comes to the council on some subset of this, it doesn't need to be those three people that bring that agenda item. Like Len and somebody else might ask somebody to put together a meeting agenda on safe routes to school. And that would be a group convened for that agenda item, not for the overall topic. Does that make sense?
Well, when you get
Yeah,
to safe
of
routes,
course, it makes sense. I just would comment that I'm days away from forwarding a letter to the Board of Supervisors and Department of Public Works, who I've already talked to on behalf of the school district and a whole bunch of parents on this, just for the intersections that in Montera are unsigned. So it'd be great to have a letter of support from the MCC, but it would have to come quickly.
Well, okay. That would be an example of an agenda item that you might sponsor at a meeting, even without being part of this group.
February 23rd.
It's up to you. We can talk about that later. But it's a
So-
good example.
Okay,
The fact you have safe routes to school there points up the fact that safe routes to school have to be have to deal with crossing Highway 1 in more than one place. So you have a
Yeah.
connection right there. Which is why I think they belong together.
Maybe we should get a vote of the council
Anyone-
whether to have them
Anything
separate or
we
not.
don't Belong together, I mean, besides Dave.
But I was just going to say, the people that are signed up for those two items can decide whether they're one item or two and how they want to split it up. I don't think the rest of
Fine.
us need to argue about it anymore.
Should we have the same three people responsible for both sections? I think that would make it simpler if we did.
That was Lynn, Michelle, and Dan. Or Greg. See, Greg's active in one area, Dan was in the other. Well, we'll sort it out. Let's let Dave say, let's just sort it out.
Remember, we don't have a quorum issue on a Brown Act issue on any of these. These are people who are interested in it, not necessarily people writing a letter to a
Okay.
Brown Act
Well
issue.
said. So just put all four names there.
Okay, good. The last item.
so
I'm
those
gonna
names
give-
are Len, Michelle, Greg, and who else?
Dan. If
Dan,
Dan wants
thank
to be
you.
there.
Dan?
Is that okay, Dan?
Yes,
The last item here, I'm not sure belongs here. I think the council productivity policies and procedures, I think that goes with the offices. I don't think it needs to be a separate thing.
So I don't know that it's a priority or a task, or we want to put it somewhere else, but the last meeting we had prompted me to mention to Greg, I think privately, that we don't have any real Zoom policies and processes. And this last meeting is the first meeting ever where I cut off chat partially and then completely. And hopefully that never arises again. And Claire and I had discussed the possibility of that happening because we knew it was going to be contentious. But I made the decision some of the times, and Claire made the ultimate decision to just shut it off, and I totally agreed with her. But it does appear arbitrary when we don't have any process and policies on that. And so developing is, because we're going to go forward with hybrid meetings at least. So I think we do need a process and policy around Zoom meetings.
Well, as secretary, I've also noticed and chair that the Zoom meetings have blurred the distinction between council and community discussion. We have particular people who wind up in both, and I think that's not good for process, but it's very hard. It's much harder to control in Zoom unless the chair is firm about it.
So
Right. And I don't want to develop a process here. I just think it's a priority that we develop one.
you want to add Zoom communications to the priority list?
It could be here, it could be under the other communications topic, but I think it is something we need to develop. And I haven't even really researched what other small groups are doing. Larger government bodies have a very different set of problems, and most of them have simply disabled chat. We've left chat enabled because of our policies to encourage communication. I suspect we've had some close to Brown Act violations because of that, but I don't know that the Brown Act is caught up with Zoom yet. despite, I'm sure, a lot of discussion, and maybe Tim can mention that when he talks.
There's also the issue of the timer and people speaking too long. And that's a software and budget issue also. Now, I'm happy to move it up into a communication category if you don't want it down here. But I knew, Claire, you had corresponded with Tim Fox and that you had a bunch of stuff to discuss. So I just put this line item here as a placeholder. I can remove
Okay,
it.
let's keep it and let's include the things that people are bringing up now. And they probably are worth us spending some time on. So let's keep it. And I just got out of that particular site. Who did you have on there? Me and you, Greg?
Yeah,
I'd like to
sounds like
add,
Dave wants to be involved.
I'd like the three of us to be on that.
Yeah, and again, if there's a fourth person who wants to be heavily involved, I'm happy to just be a technical resource when we actually start discussing.
That sounds right. Okay, good. We're more or less on time. We're actually doing quite well, but we spent a lot of time on some specific things in the last part of the meeting.
I was just gonna, you asked me earlier to talk at the end to figure out if there are any items that were priorities last year that we haven't.
Oh, yes, please do that.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go through.
And while you're doing that, Michelle, we should also ask if any council members have priorities that are not on this list and didn't already get talked about.
Yeah, for me, it would be helpful if visually Greg could share the document that he's been working on. That way I could really easily go through. So our first thing last year was Parks and Rec, and we had the pump track, which we talked about that's done. Moss Beach Park reopening celebration, we don't need to do that anymore. Quarry Park master plan, park staffing and protection, that's something that I think is important. So I
can't share my screen and Dave just left. So can I take a quick break? And when Dave comes back, I'll share my screen.
I will enable that. Sorry, I've got the Bluetooth on.
Yeah, so park staffing, I mean, I feel like from my perspective, I think areas are understaffed. We talked about this with the off-leash dog issue. So whether there's anything we want to advocate for there. And then Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, we briefly talked about that. I wasn't sure if that made it on to the priorities list.
It did.
Okay. The next area was planning, zoning, and code compliance.
What are you seeing anything?
Yes, we see it now. So we have.
I wonder if you see the right version though. How do I know what you're seeing? I'm not sure I share the right version because I have one with notes. Do you see a bunch of blue in the right-hand column?
Yes.
And are you looking at? Okay, well then those should be the notes I'm taking today.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, what's missing here? Cypress Point. I don't know that we captured that anywhere. Plan Princeton. We talked about lighting. CDRC, Commercial Zoning District.
I didn't get that last one.
Commercial Zoning District.
Could we put that under the code enforcement? Make it coding? and
No,
zoning?
it's planning. It's not code enforcement.
Planning, okay, all right.
Big Wave.
Why don't we first get the issues and then we'll decide where they fit or if they fit.
Yeah. Big Wave is missing from here. And then I don't think you captured this up above when I was talking about parks, but park staffing and protection. We should put that somewhere.
Park staffing and protection.
Yeah.
Enforcement.
Yeah, that's a good
I
one.
would say instead of protection, I'd say enforcement.
Enforcement. Let's see. Under
Wouldn't that go under parks?
Yeah,
yeah, why don't we just get the list and we can move it all around?
Okay.
I mean, or you can put it, yeah, it is part of parks, either way. Under transportation, we had Connect the Coast Side, we got that. We didn't explicitly call out Highway 1 pedestrian crossings, but that's something we talked
Oh.
about last year.
That goes
Well,
under,
so I have a line here called Connect the Coast Side Follow-up
Yeah,
under Highway 1. Does that encompass it?
well, Connect the Coast Side did everything.
yeah, that's really bigger. I would just explicitly call out pedestrian crossings. And then signalized intersections and roundabouts. It's also kind of
That's-
part of Connect the Coast Side, but its own separate topic for sure.
Well, that's
Do we-
certainly higher.
Do you want that listed as something we expect to get work on this coming year?
I'm just calling out the things we said we'd work on last year that we should decide whether they roll over to this year or not.
I don't see any way there's going to be roundabouts in the near term.
Well, there's
being
going to
done.
be work done on it. There's a whole study that's being for the Moss Beach corridor.
So comment on the Moss Beach corridor design.
Yeah, I mean, last year we listed as a broader issue of signalized intersections / roundabouts.
Well, yeah, I don't see that as a priority for this year, but you've got involvement in Montero, Moss Beach, El Granada projects, which I think covers the project that we were just talking about.
That's true.
Okay,
Okay, and then I think in the other transportation topic, you already have parallel trail, coastal trail, and we have safe routes to school. Under infrastructure, we had Meadow Creek Bridge. I don't know if there's anything, I mean, it's gonna be hopefully built this year, but
There's two Medio Bridge activities going on this year, and both will impact Highway 1, where the Medio Creek overpass, if you will, is. So it should be attended to.
there's sewer, water and power agency monitoring, which I think we have more as just sewer this year. Maybe that's
Yeah.
okay.
And that's more of a task than a
Yeah.
priority.
And then we had communication. We had a topic on communication, so internet and cell communications, and that also plays into emergency preparedness, which is a separate topic that I definitely think we should capture in this. Let's see. We all, under the sustainability topic, we had coastal erosion and armoring, managed retreat, and then fuel reduction, which is captured under wildfire. And then lastly, on the communications and community topic, we already talked about emergency preparedness, management of visitors. I think that was high up on the priority last year with COVID and, the increase in visitors to the coast. Community centers. That's something we've talked about off and on.
Did we have parking as a breakout item?
Education, kind of broad. We had education, homelessness, crime, and COVID recovery. And that's it.
Michelle, did parking appear anywhere?
No,
is that a
There's
Highway
intention.
1 issue?
No, it's both Highway 1 and other places.
Is it visitor parking or all parking that you're concerned about?
So really, in some areas, you really don't need to distinguish between the two. So I think the broad label is better.
and then COVID recovery was the last one. Still, we're trying to recover from COVID a year later.
I would
Okay, so
suggest,
these are all topics that we discussed but didn't do anything with, and we now want to decide where we're going to go.
Well, we
I would
did do
suggest-
something with Cypress Point.
that we add a planning topic to this, and that the things that are obviously planning that Michelle just mentioned go into that category, and that the rest of the things that Greg finds a place to put them.
Yeah, before you do that though, okay, under 2021, that's fine. And I would point out that for 2022, it's not clear there is anything to do with Big Wave. Their permits are all granted. Cypress Point is a null issue until new plans get filed. Everything that was going to be done is already done. Plan Princeton, there's no indication that planning plans to bring that back this year.
I believe Cypress Point should stay there.
Why, Len?
We can stay in touch with the county about it because there's some indications that they'll want to bring forward permits for it.
Yeah, but
So we should just,
as a priority until something is done, it's awfully hard to say. Coastal erosion, armoring, managed retreat, add sea level rise at the end of that. Because that's how the county is handling all of that right now. And I'll point out the community center, GCSD is planning to put in a community center as part of their new office building when they bought the school. But that won't go in for 2 more years because they've extended the lease at the school. But at least it's in process and planning.
So if I could capture what I hear Dave saying, the things I'm about to put in italics are not likely to be priorities in 2022, at least not action.
In my opinion, the community center, I think maybe, but I just want to let people know who hadn't heard that GCSD is planning in a GCSD community center.
have they stated that that's an all community resource, or will it be more restrictive?
I think that's up for discussion. I mean, they're spending community money on it, but they may get money from other places too. Who knows?
I'm sorry that we didn't get this entire list at the very beginning, and that's my fault, kind of. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I don't object to any of these things being added. And I would be willing to trust Greg with consultation with any of us he wants to consult to put them in the proper place. If with no objection.
Well, what
I'd
I
like
would
to-
suggest is process that I send out this for comment after the meeting and people can reply back to me and I'll make the changes.
I think that's a reasonable way to do it.
Can we do that?
Yes, let's plan
Only
on.
reply to me, not discuss amongst yourself.
And Greg's not going to discuss it with the people who reply to him. He's just going to take their input.
I think if we move on to tasks and committee assignments, we can do that fairly quickly because we've already discussed a lot of the rationale behind all of this. What I would like to ask is that the people who are currently doing these assignments gather whatever information the next person needs to have in order to do it this year. Like, for example, if there are links to agendas of different organizations or schedules or anything like that, that they share that with the next person and perhaps attach it to the final task assignment list as a way of providing continuity so that the people coming after us know what to do and where to find the information. For example, if you're a liaison to MWSD, please provide the links to their meetings and to their website for the next person.
Can you guys see this task list draft at all?
Yeah, I think it's
see it.
we're not seeing the first part of it though. Yeah,
How's
I think-
that?
I think there's still more before that.
No.
That's
Oh,
No, that's the top.
Okay.
So,
Can you make it bigger?
yeah, if you narrow
You beat me to it.
the,
So Planning Review Committee, that's the group that receives the referrals from the Planning Department and replies to them. This is the group that decides when to add something to the agenda of the actual meetings, like we did with the dog thing last week. Everybody gets a copy of all these referrals. Everybody can agendize them if they want to. This actually takes a fair amount of experience and training. Anybody who gets involved in this has going to have a little bit of a learning curve. Right now, Dave, Michelle, and I are doing it. I'd like to continue
Jill
doing it.
expressed interest, right?
Jill expressed interest, and there may be other people that want to express interest as well.
Does somebody want to come off the list?
This one has to be 3 people only because this is a Brown Act discussion group.
Yeah, I'm happy to give up my position on this to Jill.
Done.
Okay, good.
And I will point out, especially since Tim Fox is on the call, that we have been treating this as completely an ad hoc committee, but it's been functioning more as a standing committee. And that raises some Brown Act issues. It's somewhere on the margin. It's not a normal standing committee because it's ad hoc in what it does. So we may need to turn this into a standing committee that has agendas and public access.
What I've been doing in my responses, Tim, which I think is okay, is saying that the Midcoast Community Council has considered this referral using its usual practices. And I don't say we think or the Midcoast Community Council thinks, I just say there are no comments or there are these comments.
And that part's fine. I'm just talking about the way we operate the committee.
So, in our work on the off-leash program, we encountered a 4th person with interest there, and I'm assuming the conversation we have with Tim Fox present will help address that.
Tim, do you want to comment on this now, please?
Dave's concern is a valid one in that the Brown Act has rules for standing committees, committees that have ongoing jurisdiction over a topic and no limited term. And those committees, if formed by the MCC, basically acquire the Brown Act compliance obligations of the full body. And there's also a rule essentially in the Brown Act against delegating some of the authority to an executive committee of less than the full membership, largely for the same reason, so that discussion of policy matters can't really be offloaded to a non-Brown Act compliant group. There are ways, especially in today's day and age, to solve that problem by posting an agenda of the subcommittee. In many cases, too much effort is made to try to preserve the Brown Act exception, and it winds up hamstringing useful conversation, especially in a time when there's greater flexibility about the manner of meeting. Maybe the concern is less about posting an agenda and making the Zoom link available for others to potentially join. But that is a potential concern. And anytime you have 4 members of the MCC expressing an interest in a particular issue, your first instinct should be, can we put this on an agenda of the meeting itself? And then if there's another need, such as to form a subcommittee to discuss it further, potentially creating a subgroup, but complying with the Brown Act and posting an agenda.
Yeah, and the issue here is we have kept it to 3 people, except when it goes to the full council, so that's fine. It's that all of our discussions, with very, very rare exceptions, have been all email between the 3 people. And then, if we have substantive comments, they always go to the MCC. If they're, the typical, your landscaping plan isn't adequate, we have geotechnical concerns, whatever, then this group of 3 will just send a mail comment on behalf of the whole council. So that's why I see it in a gray area with the Brown Act, and I was interested in your opinion.
It's certainly fine to have the group decide which matters need to be brought to the MCC and to engage with appropriate persons such as applicants or the planning department if there are questions that go to that question about whether or not to bring it to the full MCC. Suggesting design changes only if it really goes to the question of whether or not the full group needs to decide it or not. So yeah, there are there is a need not to delegate certain functions to less than the full board, but what was originally described as the role of the subcommittee, which is to vet projects not for compliance, but to vet projects for controversy and to bring them to the full MCC when appropriate, and to spot the issues so that you know which ones are likely to need to go to the full body or not. That's totally appropriate to do, and you can do that by email, certainly. I would have a problem if a fourth member were to email and say, I'd really like this to go to the full board. Emailing the three would be potentially bad. So, setting up a process by which if an individual member has a concern, that they do it by some means other than emailing the three other members. I would recommend that you have a process other than a fourth member of the MCC emailing the other three members of that subcommittee and saying, I really would like this put on the MCC agenda.
I would assume that the person would email or contact the chair to include an agenda item.
That would be best. I mean, asking that something be put on the agenda is usually regarded as a very appropriate act in compliance with the Brown Act. So sending an email to the chair saying, I ask that this be put on the agenda, I will always find a way to make sure that that can be done freely, because saying that kind of communication is forbidden would really hamstring the useful functioning of the MCC.
No, I think that's the reason everybody gets a copy of every referral is to afford that opportunity.
Yeah, and I can't think of any case where we've ever had a fourth person approach us and say, I want to be part of this discussion.
But what is the procedure? Who would for example, write to?
Me,
The chair currently.
as chair, not as part of this committee. And you would not copy the other people, Jill and Dave.
I got that. Understood.
Okay, good. Okay, that's the toughest one, I think, in some ways. The second thing, which I do not see on the screen anymore, was about the.
Well, I took it down. You wanted to keep it up?
Yeah, keep it up if you would.
Okay.
Okay, the CTC TAC, I don't think we need any more, do we?
Yeah, the TAC has not met in a year. It's time to drop that.
Okay.
But what I do plan to produce, it will be a related type of meeting. So, but that would be added in a presentation to the board.
Okay. Now, next thing, Quarry Park's Murata Surf Master Plan liaison. The key word here is liaison. It's not the people that are interested in this. It's the person who takes responsibility for representing the MCC to this group or getting information from the group, the official contact person.
Happy to hand this over, and I'm not sure it's even going to come up again this year.
I do believe it'll come up. I mean, I'll take it because of that reason if Dave wants to do it, but we're looking for somebody else long-term. So I don't necessarily agree that the liaison is needed. I'd say at least two people if I'm one. There should be somebody else.
No. This is at the request of Parks. They wanted an official liaison from the MCC.
So what am I doing with the names?
It sounds like we're leaving it as is since nobody else spoke.
I said I was interested in that.
Oh, okay.
But both of you, perhaps?
No, drop me and Adlan, and we'll notify the planner.
Good point. If you become the liaison to another group, please let them know that you are now the liaison. CDC liaison and rarely being involved in interviews for new members of the CDRC. Michelle did that, I think, perhaps because you were chair.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
There was no activity on this, but I think this is a role for the chair.
Okay, so put me on there, please.
May I speak on that item?
Sure.
The CDRC is sorely needing, the reason there's been no interviews is because no applicants and they have glaring vacancies. There is neither a rep or an alternate for Moss Beach, nothing at all. And El Renata has, Chris Johnson has served as the rep there and he will be termed out this spring. And also Miramar, so I think, for a long time, the MCC website had this vacancy situation on the website, but if there's anything you can do proactively to get people to interested to apply for that, it would be good. Thanks.
Can we announce it at the agenda of the next meeting?
We could even have an agenda item on it.
Yeah, anything to publicize it would
We
help.
can put it.
Well,
we
we've
can
already
put it in the
published the
newsletter.
agenda.
We can put it in the newsletter. We can work on that. It's important.
You could have a CDRC member come and speak on the issue at a meeting or, anything like that.
I think that's a good idea. Okay, mailbox pickup. Our mail comes to post office box in Moss Beach. Almost everything now that we get from the county or from anybody else is online. We get very little mail. We just got our finances put online, so it's not a big task. It probably makes sense to have somebody who goes to the Moss Beach post office do it, which I guess would be me and Michelle. Maybe
I
not even
know.
Michelle. You
I
want
don't
to?
even have a key to that. And I actually don't have a PO box anymore. Who has the keys, Claire? You?
I have one key.
Who has the second one? Who did this year before?
I'm not sure. We could get another key if no one else has one. It's possible.
Didn't Barbara do it?
Yeah, Barbara did it. That's what it was.
Yeah, but I thought she said she'd passed over the key. Anyway, somebody can.
I'll check with her.
Are
So
we dropping
yeah.
Michelle?
That's fine. I mean, I'm happy to be on it. I just would need a key.
okay, Jill, me, and Michelle, or just Jill and Michelle.
I think the post office
like
only
to
gives
do
you 2 keys, so let's just have 2 people on here.
I can get another key if I can't get it from Michelle. I mean, from Barbara, I'll get it from the post office.
So are we back to Jill and Michelle?
I think 2 people is probably enough.
That's what I was saying.
because one person does it
So
regularly. and the
Claire,
other-
definitely, and then either Jill or myself. Jill, you would like to be?
I would like to do it this year.
Okay, let's do Claire and Jill.
Okay, related to that is when I pick up mail that we actually do want, but we don't need to do anything with, we just need to file. I take it to the office and I don't know what to do with it. I leave it on the table. We need someone to organize the office and have a good filing system. And I'd like to add that as a task. And I'm like to nominate Jill because I think you've got an organized mind.
I think Jill volunteered for that last year.
So I went in there to organize it and my thought was, okay, we need a dumpster and we're gonna put everything in it and then we're gonna hose it out and sterilize it and then paint it. And I thought, this is more than what I asked for. So I did not do anything.
Whoever does this, I'd like them to think about working with Lisa. Lisa has organized this in a way that makes good sense to Lisa. I just don't know what it is. And maybe she could be helpful.
Yeah, and I want to point out that those are records that I think most have been scanned, but not all of them. So that's absolutely, nothing should be disposed of until we know whether it's been scanned or we have full agreement that it's unimportant.
May I add to this? Yeah, when I went in there in 2012, County Council had asked for minutes from the P&Z committee meeting around 2000. I said, we'll let you in. I mean, the floor was covered in boxes. You couldn't even walk in there. And basically, this was a long-term project going through that stuff, and there were a lot of stuff was thrown out, but there was gold mines in there. I mean, much of the stuff you find on the MCC website, back to 1990, all that stuff, it was in a paper bag, some bottom drawer, and all different things. And yes, please don't anybody just go in and willy-nilly start throwing things out. I don't know what has occurred as far as the current papers coming in since in the last 3 years. Basically, I was just putting in, because we had paper agendas and minutes at that time. And so those drafts I just put in the folder, but the final copies of those paper things weren't printed out. So you need to look at 2012 and on. Those paper files are probably not of much use, and they are digitized, but before that they aren't. And so before 2012, I would not assume that any of it has been digitized. So yeah.
I'd like to offer a suggestion on this point. Jill is on the mail pickup, which ultimately may wind up there. But more importantly, she talked about the possible use of the airport office, and the restaurant now has opened there. So you have a very nice restaurant, our office next door, and it does seem like it could afford an opportunity to meet the public there. And I guess just give Jill a charter to look at it in an overview sense, and then bring forward, a work plan or an idea there.
That's a great idea.
Would
Does
you
Jill
be up for
think it's a
that?
good idea?
And I'll point out as a county facility, so we can probably get county facilities to paint it if we get this stuff out of the way.
Well, I just gave the overview. I went in there and first of all, it's very dusty and I'm allergic to dust. So I'm gonna have to PPE up to go in there. And I wouldn't know the difference between what is really important and what isn't. And I would need help to figure out which is which. So I just don't think after everything's out of there, I could definitely paint it and do that, but I don't have any expertise going through these documents. I'd have to have Lisa or someone else oversee it.
Dave, would you be willing to help with that?
Yeah, I can help with that over this year. I also have one
What do you want me
extra
to put?
document that's the pre-creation of the MCC emails that I got from Leonard Warren that definitely need to get scanned and put on the website, or at least the ones that are not private.
Okay, I appreciate the two of you doing this. I know it's not an appealing and easy task. Let us know what kind of help you need. Posting agendas at the post offices, that involves posting the agendas as soon as they come out 72 hours before the meeting, and going after the meeting and removing the agendas from the bulletin boards at the post offices. Right now, Greg is doing Montera. I presume you want to keep doing that. Okay,
Yes.
Michelle is posting at Moss Beach, and I'm guessing you don't want to keep doing that,
I don't really want to keep doing it.
which leaves me doing that.
Are you gonna take that?
I'll take it.
I
And
want
then
to drop off
Alberta.
from El Granada.
Yeah, there's a typo there at El Granada, get rid of the 3.
No, there you go. Len, you can keep
I've been doing it for El Granada, but I've used Dave as a backup. I'd like somebody else to be primary, and then I can serve as a backup. It's nice to have that.
So one of the people that lives in El Granada, perhaps?
Yeah, Dan, maybe.
I can do that, yes.
Okay, great. Google MCC distribution list.
That's the item we
I
were
just-
talking about that might transition to MailChimp.
So you,
Yeah, I just view that I volunteered for this because I view it's part of, I have to learn all these things as vice chair. When Dave leaves, I got to be able to do his stuff. So I put my name on there.
Well, I hope that this is done by the end of this year and that we're able to transition over to MailChimp. So I'd like
I
to be
agree.
part of that transition.
Yeah, just put Michelle on too.
Dave, Greg,
Well, wait a minute here. So like I said, there's this whole thing about privacy. So we need to minimize the number of people that are doing this. This is separate from the transition. This is actually maintaining the list as it stands right now.
But couldn't it take on both functions?
I-
With you having sole responsibility for the Google list, but you're as a group working the transition?
Yeah. Once you add another task assignment below this, transition agenda list,
Oh, sorry.
and that's all right. It doesn't need to be immediately, Jason. I don't care.
Okay, so what did you call it?
Transition agenda mailing list.
All mailing lists, right?
Well,
Right, and who's on that?
yeah,
Dave?
Michelle for sure. And
Do I
I
need to
think-
be on it?
No,
I don't need to be on this. I'm a technical resource, but I don't need to be part of it.
Well, I'd like you to be on it.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
Could
Just
we
leave the
also
two.
add, I don't think we have MailChimp as a task, so we should add that below.
Absolutely. That should get added.
But you,
Manage MailChimp.
You're missing an M.
Who else?
That's-
MailChimp.
well, that seems sufficient there.
Oh,
and then-
sorry.
Well, this should be somebody who, I don't know if Michelle has decided whether she's running again, but even if she is, we need a backup person on this.
All right, I'm the backup. I'm going to take on these technical tasks, semi-technical.
do we want to stay on Facebook?
I believe we should bail out of Facebook personally. And I have bailed out of Facebook myself almost exclusively. I posted once in the last 9 months.
Anybody else have a strong feeling on this?
I think we should get out of Facebook too.
Do we
Okay.
have a lot of followers? Is it a vehicle that people are relying on?
42.
Yeah, we haven't really been consistent about posting there. That's on me. I think some people follow us there. I don't know. I really feel like Nextdoor is a better place for us, but unfortunately we're unable to get our own Nextdoor page. The Nextdoor won't allow us to do that. So that's why Facebook has been at least someplace other than the website to post about our meetings.
If
I
we have
guess-
42 followers, that seems like it's sort of significant.
It's I think the 100% of them are on our agenda list.
Are they?
And if
Yeah.
not 100%, it's over 90.
Well, why don't you post on Facebook that we're going to get rid of Facebook and they should sign up for the agenda list?
Yeah, we wouldn't just shut it down. We would transition that. But
Do people?
All right,
make
so who will
comments
do
there?
the transition management?
well, wait. I'm not hearing a consensus yet. There's people who haven't spoken.
Well, the question I had is, do we get any comments back on Facebook?
No, we don't allow commenting.
Just-
Don't allow it, so it's just information only going out.
It's outgoing only.
No,
Um,
there are, I think there's some misstatements here. There are 208 followers on our Facebook page. And
Wow.
we do allow comments.
Okay,
However,
so
we rarely get them.
So when I have gotten email from Facebook about how many people our posts are reaching, they're always in the low 40s.
Reach is a little different than followers, yes.
I know it's people that are actually looking at it.
Right. Well, I mean, in the absence of a name presence and Nextdoor and having it there, it's not, I mean, it's,
For me, it's a philosophical thing, but
Uh,
it doesn't mean it is for the rest.
I'm not a Facebook user either. I have an account, but and I use it for portal communication. Anyway, I mean, if Michelle would continue it up to date at this point, I'd be pleased, and I do that up to her.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to continue posting there. I do think just in the interest of trying to reach a more diverse group of people in the community, having Facebook as just another communication channel is good.
I agree with that.
Okay, so let's do it
I
then.
agree.
Okay, so are we going to be posting every agenda and similar things?
Yeah, I
for-
can do that.
Hold on.
Agendas.
May I,
I didn't get a chance to comment, so
So say
I-
something, Dan. Go ahead.
I agree that we should pull out of Facebook.
You know, I think we need to make a distinction between philosophical points of view and what's most effective in reaching the community. And if some of the community is reaching us, or at least reading our agendas through Facebook, then we should reach out to them and allow them to do that.
think
Why don't we-
also, can I,
Why don't, go
can
ahead.
may I add to this?
Lisa? Yeah.
So I was doing the Facebook, I actually made the Facebook page and was posting there. And okay, so when I would always, when I posted on Nextdoor or on Facebook, I would link to something on the MCC website, because often people just go to that link to see what it's about or look at the pictures. and they don't comment on Nextdoor or Facebook. So you wouldn't know, you would never know. But then you go to the analytics on the website page and you see all this traffic bump. You can see it right after you've posted on Nextdoor or whether it was Facebook. And that's just raising community awareness that you exist. And on Facebook, you can post more general topics that you wouldn't put on the blog post on the website page of interest. Always you get people interested in the shoreline, whatever it is, it's just raising awareness of the MCC. Thanks.
Agree that's possible, but we haven't been doing it for years.
At this point, I'd like to say we'll continue to post on Facebook and Michelle will do that.
Claire,
Next, yes.
could we join that review with the transition of the agenda mailing list? Because that really relates to, basically, I assume that the transition will develop a plan and come back to us. And it seems like that group of people could also consider the Facebook Nextdoor as part of our distribution list in effect. So just to look at it and bring it back later.
The transition is pretty specific to the mailing list, but yeah, I don't, if we're not
I'm
if
just
we're
viewing this as
on Facebook, then there's no need to do anything related to that. I mean,
We
part
don't
of the
need-
transition for the mailing list could be posting to Facebook.
Right.
Oh.
We don't need to close this topic forever. We can always come back to see if we want
No.
to stay on Facebook. For right now, we're on Facebook and we need someone to post.
Point of order, we have 52 minutes left.
Okay, so let's keep moving then. Posting on Nextdoor in the review. Dave, you're going to continue to do that, maybe with Greg as a backup?
Happy to have a backup that I can transition.
I'm not interested in doing Nextdoor, but I certainly will do enough of, Dave, what are you doing? Emailing the agenda that Half Moon Bay Review?
No, it's a calendar posting through a real clumsy third-party calendar system that they use.
Well, train me on it and I'll do a fraction of the ones this year so I know how to do it when you're gone.
Okay. And sometime during the year, we'll need a volunteer to be the Nextdoor backup. It's pretty straightforward.
I can do that for right now, but we can replace me later.
Yeah. Okay.
The next few, let's just run through these. We can assign people to them and they can work on it separately outside of this venue. Meeting room, we do not need at the moment, but I'm hoping that Dan will be willing to do that when we go back.
Shouldn't we keep, if we want to have hybrid readiness, that belongs in one place or the other?
Belongs
And I
under
think-
Zoom.
Well, that's item AV equipment transport setup, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The Zoom stuff falls in that category.
So hybrid meetings should have Dan and Dave and Greg, I think. Or whoever else ends up learning how to do this from Dave.
Okay,
Yeah. And I'll point out, I have the AV equipment we bought for the hybrid meetings in my house.
Meeting binder and printed materials, I don't think there's anything to do with that at this point. We'll leave that as is. Okay, liaison with Board of Supervisors, etc. These are people who, at the very least, get the agenda, read it, let us know if there's anything we need to be aware of. In some cases, it involves more than that, but that's the basic minimum responsibility. So Board of Supervisors is currently Dave. Keep it that way. Planning
we need
committee,
to add people. That's what Dave was saying.
Well,
Some of
we can add, all of these where, when we get to like October or whatever, if nobody else is interested, then we'll look at this task list where I'm the only name. We'll get people then.
sounds good.
Planning Commission is currently Dave. Zoning Hearing Officer is Dave. Coastside Design Review Committee is Dave, me, and
Could I
add-
ask Jill, if she's getting involved, and I'm certainly welcoming this in plan review, could we add her as an alternate to learn what the SMC Planning Commission and Zoning Hearing Officer liaisons do?
Sure.
Okay, so add Jill to those three topics.
I only
the,
said two.
But I
Oh, all
said
three?
one. Yes, please.
Is Coastside Design Review Committee also?
Yes, yes.
Okay, you see it?
LAFCO is currently Greg.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, CDRC we just did. No, RCD, I'm sorry. I don't need to be on that.
I'm
And
interested
Michelle's
in-
been working with them. What do you want here?
Yeah, I'd like to be added.
Yeah.
Fire Safe Monthly, do we need to remove
Wait a
that?
minute, Dave, do you want to
No,
be on here
no,
or do
I-
you want Len to be on?
Which,
For
No,
line
ours-
34
ours-
RCD, doesn't matter to me. I'll follow
well,
it. Sorry,
Michelle
what?
is doing it now. I mean, that's
Yeah,
fine. And I'm doing Fire Safe Monthly, that we should continue.
Okay, so that continues, okay. Parks Commission, Dave. DPW is currently Len.
Yes,
Emergency Services has been Jill and Michelle. Harbor District, Dave and Len. Sewer Authorities is Greg.
oh, Claire,
Yes,
I'd like to take myself off the Harbor District, but have somebody else go on.
okay. Anyone else interested in the Harbor Commission?
I'd like to take myself off emergency services and put myself on the harbor.
Great.
Okay. Michelle, you'll
But-
stay on Emergency for Services?
Yeah, I will. Is there someone else that wants to join it?
Yeah. A question is CHEAP still active in emergency services?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sure.
okay.
I'll help with that if you want me to.
Sure. Sounds good.
Mhm.
Fire Protection District is Dave and Dan. Schools is Michelle, Jill, and Len.
Hmm.
That's fine. I stayed
Okay.
in touch with them.
Okay. Greg is the Water District. This is jumping around. The Parks is Len, Greg, and Dan.
I don't have a role there really.
Hmm.
Is there somebody who lives in El Granada that's gonna stay? Oh, yeah, Dan. Yeah, I'm gonna
Right.
take
That would be
myself off the
me.
GCC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Both down
okay.
there in El Granada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Caltrans,
Don't forget though, that also includes Pillar Point Bluff Parks.
right, but you can at least get us the agendas and tell us if
Sure,
we'd
okay.
be aware of something. Lennon, Michelle are on Caltrans. Greg is MWSD. Half Moon Bay City Council, I'm happy to give that up.
You're a fixture there, just like Harvey is.
You know, I'm happy to keep my name on there. I'm not happy necessarily to keep giving the monthly reports. If someone else would be interested in doing that.
Oh, but it's,
It's a lot for me to commit to. It's right during my kid's bedtime, so I'd rather not do that.
I don't mind doing it. I'm happy to give it up. I guess I'll keep doing it for right now. If anyone
So
else wants to.
who wants their name? Michelle's willing to have her name on it. Half Moon Bay City Council?
Yeah,
I thought you said you want to give it up.
Still have to do the monthly reports.
but nobody's jumping in there. I'll stay on the topic. I am willing to let someone else give the monthly report to the council. If not, I'll keep doing it.
Claire, what,
Well-
add Jill to that and then you can mentor me into how to do it, okay?
Sounds good. Okay. Planning Commission, Dave and me. Pacifica City Council, I know Greg is interested in that. Michelle, you want to stay with
Really
that?
haven't been keeping up to date with that, so I'm happy to give that up.
Okay.
Give it up, okay?
Coastal Commission. I would suggest that the people that are doing the referrals be on that, although what's there right now is fine. The CCAG is Len. Samtrans is me. I'm happy to give that up.
Hey, Len, you want to orient me to CCAG?
Okay, put Greg's name too.
Done.
Anybody else want Samtrans?
And I'll
Um,
point out that this is mostly all about the reimagined Samtrans plan that they've been developing and now are about to start implementing.
There's not a lot to do probably if it's, but I guess I'll keep doing it. Regional
Well,
Water
the-
Control Board, Greg?
Yeah, I added that. I'll explain why when we discuss sewers in an agenda item.
Okay.
Okay.
Infrastructure and support, ownership of the Gmail account. Okay, I think we've already pretty much discussed this, and Greg and Dave.
This is our Gmail, our Midcoast Community Council at gmail.com.
Right,
Yeah,
okay. Institutional Knowledge Repository.
I got these from Dave and just sort of try to transpose them into maybe my words.
yeah. Clearly, I need to transfer this stuff to as many people as possible, and I don't know how to do that within the Brown Act. But
Well, I
we'll-
could stick my name on it.
Yeah, to some extent, we're doing it by area. As I move off of things, people ask me questions.
Okay. Dave's in charge, okay. Brown Act device, you're adding yourself to these all, Greg.
I
okay,
might
that's-
as well.
Respond to incoming requests to MCC email as needed, sometimes with research. I think the chair and the secretary is supposed to do that traditionally. I'm
Yeah.
happy to do it.
Yeah, we just need to formalize it.
Post incoming events to website as needed, usually trimmed. Okay, Greg, you want to manage that and develop some criteria and let us know what you're
Well,
doing?
the question is, how do I know what the incoming events are? Because
Oh, we get them by
fraction-
email. And
But-
this is one thing here I didn't mention as things that Dave only does. I subscribe to, I don't know, 200-300 email lists, most of which fortunately are pretty idle. And that's where some of these events come from.
Okay, let's combine these two as you suggested. Greg, is this redundant with above? Yes. Combine those two and put you and Dave on there. You can add me if you want.
Boy, I'm not going to look forward to this one.
Yeah, I'm
They
just
look-
gonna have to start tracking the ones that don't come to the whole council.
Wait a minute, which
This
one am I on
event?
here?
Or just general like blog things that need to be blog posts on the website. Because I think this has been really a group effort. I know I've done a lot. Lisa sometimes posts, Greg, Dave, we all, go in there and do that. Is it just, are you talking about events or are you talking about blog posts and just general communication?
I
blog
assume they're all
posts,
blog posts.
Yeah, they're all done as blog posts. And yeah, for quite a
So just-
while, I had the higher percentage of them, but that may not be true anymore. I didn't count this last year.
I'm
What
happy to help out.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Website administration. Who's doing this? Dave and Michelle? Greg?
You skipped subscribe to agendas.
Yeah, so that one's
yeah.
the redundant one that we're gonna combine with 67.
You're going to combine it where?
With the one right above it. The one you suggested to combine it
I4,
with.
sorry.
Oh. Okay, so those combine. All right,
Yeah.
I'll worry.
We can
I'll work
do
out
that
the
later.
formatting later.
But then now we have 4 people. I guess that's okay because it's just,
It's tasks.
yeah.
And I can take myself off. I'm okay with that.
Oh, Claire, but it's so much fun.
Okay, the last two are website issues,
Yeah.
which we've discussed a lot.
Well, the last one is pretty much of an overlap with.
Yeah, I think I7
is
is
up.
an overlap.
It looks like a duplicate now.
Yeah,
Yeah, just drop it.
I have one thing to add.
what's that?
Oh,
Adopt a
just dropped it.
highway. What? No, not to that. A new one. Not new. A very old one that Barbara used to manage, and no one's really kept it up. Adopt a highway. We should
Yeah.
probably get back to doing that.
Let's not discuss right now whether we should do that, but let's have somebody present that to us later on. Who wants to do that? Michelle?
We've signed up for it. We have paperwork with Caltrans. We just need somebody to agree to manage it,
All right.
at least for the time being.
Yeah, I can.
I realize we are really doing poorly on time now. I'd like to take a break, but I'm not sure we can afford to do that. The next item I think on the agenda is the financial report. Can you do that fairly quickly?
Oh yeah,
Michelle?
this is gonna be really fast. I can share my screen if I have the ability to do so. Let's see. Okay, so I just put together, I think we do our annual budget at the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. So this is the last one that Len prepared. This is where we're at right now. So the expenses since July 1st, our balance is 11,556.30. And then looking at this coming year, I had 4 annual repeatable expenses. In June, we will have our Zoom renewal. I did want to ask, well, let me just go through them all. And then we have our old website, which I put a note, is this still necessary? And Lisa said no. So I will actually remove this as an expense. Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
suggest you're gonna have an extra expense on Zoom functionality, although we
Yeah.
haven't discussed it.
Yeah, so if that's a note on there. If we ever go over 100 people, I mean, more than 100 people can't join with our current license. If we ever have a meeting where we think we will go over 100 people, we can upgrade for a month for $50 extra. I think we thought that may happen with the off-leash dog meeting, but it didn't. There may be another topic. It would be great to have just a $50 line item approved, so that if we do ever, if we're ever at a meeting and we're seeing the numbers approach 100, that whoever's managing Zoom could actually just upgrade right then and there. I believe that's possible. And then we
So-
could have
So
the,
we don't need to pre-approve $50 expenditures. It's only expenditures above $50.
I looked at the bylaws because I was doing this regarding the logo, and it was 25.
We changed that. I don't, God knows when we changed it, but it's $50.
Okay, that's not a great updated in the bylaws.
The bylaws are an entirely different topic, which I hope will not be tackled during this year.
Okay, well, okay, then we don't need to pre-approve that upgrade then. We'll remove the old website expense. We have the new website is going to be renewed in September for $216. And then our PO box will be renewed also in September, assuming we get the invoice and pay it on time for $100. Those are the only repeating expenses that I saw over the last 2 fiscal years. So I think we need a motion to approve these, or if anyone has anything that they'd like to add.
That has to be on a regular agenda item.
Oh. Okay. So do we do that at the end of the fiscal year?
We usually do it when they come up, but it can be any time. It just needs to
It
be.
says on this agenda, approval of expenditures.
Yeah.
It did. I missed that.
It did say that. I could be
My
wrong.
mistake. I'm sorry.
Can we do that at this meeting? I think we can.
We can,
Well, this is-
absolutely. I so move.
Second,
Second,
Len, would you call the roll? Len?
he's talking, but we're not hearing him. 'cause
Are
he's
you muted? You're
Jill,
muted, Len.
Jill.
Yes, yes.
Greg,
Yes,
Dan,
Yes,
Dave,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes,
and myself, yes, passes 7-0.
Okay, that was to approve 443.42 in expenses for this calendar year.
Got it?
thank you. And at some point, I'd like to consider at a regular meeting, other things we might want to spend our money on. This is good.
Absolutely.
Moving into policies and procedures, I wanted to introduce, I think you all got the letter I sent. My major interest here, as I said in the beginning, is to get as many agreements on how we do things agreed to as possible today, so that we don't have to keep going over and over things that we disagree about. And I also want to come up with some kind of framework where people who want to do things that are a little bit extra or a little bit off the beaten path can do that without disrupting the processes of the council and causing more difficulties or violating Brown Acts, et cetera, et cetera. Tim is here. I really appreciate him being here. The one thing on my list that I wanted to start with was trying to come up with a way for people to express their thoughts and ideas in writing in a way that is doable. And I had two thoughts, and I'm not sure these are my thoughts. One is that they can write letters to the council and have them posted with correspondence, but I'm not sure exactly where that goes. And the other is that they can have personal blog sites, personal websites that they can link to from the MCC website so that people can see what they want to say without making it be part of an MCC forum. So I'm open to suggestions and discussion on this, and especially help from Tim, not just in terms of what's legal, but what's likely to work for us.
Clarification, what did you mean about personal websites? Are you suggesting that there be a link posted on an agenda blog post linking to Greg Diegas's article on agenda topic X?
Not on the agenda packet, but elsewhere. Tim?
Where would these links be placed so that the community and other members can understand the issues in depth?
It could be a new top tab, or it could be under About MCC. I would recommend the latter.
I think the idea that I proposed on a call to Claire was that if members of the MCC maintained their own websites or blogs to communicate to the public, that a link to that site could be included on the MCC webpage on the members list, in addition to your contact info, such as your email addresses. I had not thought about the prospect of having item-specific links off-site. I'll have to think about that, about how that would work, because of the rule that I'm trying to manage for, the new rules for social media posting under AB 992, which have only been in effect since January of 2021, and that we don't have a lot of interpretive guidance on. It attempted to liberalize the ability of elected officials to communicate with their constituents, but placed entirely new restrictions on the way in which elected officials are allowed to engage with each other on social media, including blogs, including archive, like share files, like Google Docs, that type of thing. So I will continue to think about that question about whether or not on whether there's an opportunity to allow a link to a specific post on an elected official's website for the benefit of members of the public. I am thinking it might be possible, but I have to think through the implications of that.
So at
So
this point, go ahead, Greg.
my concern has been, as you know, to have, we have no staff. We also have no powers of passing codes or laws or whatever, an advisory body. So in the interest of transparency and open communication, my hope was that members who take the time can post related to a specific agenda topic, the background research they've done. This came up most recently in the off-leash thing, where I put together like a 5-page list of pros and cons, and I wanted to post it so everybody could see that I'd read 200 and something emails and summarize the findings and consider it before they came to the meeting so we could have a more productive discussion, but I was not allowed to do that. I think it could have helped. So I don't know how you make that legal, but to me, without a staff to help summarize and produce position papers and make recommendations to the council like they do in the water and sewer agencies, we really have to catch up on all this stuff ourselves, and we have nobody preparing us the background.
Greg, could you clarify? So if you took a particular agenda item that's coming up, you're saying if you had done research on it, you'd like to be able to post it in advance of the meeting?
Yeah, even if I'm not on the committee.
Understand. But so let's just take that as a specific example so Tim could comment on it. So we have an agenda item that's posted on a Friday though, and you develop research that's available prior to the meeting. You're looking for that to be posted immediately, but after the first posting of the item. And then do we need to communicate that to the public? I mean, how just
I could say, put a link onto it, you know,
well,
put a link onto the blog post for the agenda item.
so a question to Dave, who handles a lot of the agenda posting. So we edit that on something of a continuing basis. So if Greg did research on a topic after the initial posting, you could put that on the blog post as an update, I think mechanically, but what are your thoughts about the process?
I'm very concerned about it, not so much as a Brown Act issue, because I don't think the Brown Act directly addresses it, but as a question of what happens if all 7 council members want to post something. It becomes incredibly unwieldy, and it's very hard to argue that we're not trying to convince each other about something. Even if it's only 3 people, or even if it's only 1, it's inherently hard to write something like that without it being opinion. I think that the right thing to do is bring it up at the council meeting, and if we want to add it to supporting documents after the council meeting, so people can refer to it, which is what we often do with presentations to us during council meetings. I think that's reasonable, but
I would say 3 things in reply. The first thing I would say is the selection of information is by itself an opinion-based activity. So even in doing research, you are in fact, having your own opinion on confirmation bias and selection.
Mhm.
Okay. The second thing I'd say is, where else are we to share information on the fact foundation and decision criteria that we will apply to an issue? You don't do it in 3-minute talking points in the meeting. That's why we have people reaching opinions that aren't, how can I put it, completely disclosed in terms of their fact foundation, right? This just came up with the environmental issues at Pillar Point Bluff. We have one body of the public saying X, and we have our own council members saying Y, and we don't have a basis for discriminating. And doing it after the meeting doesn't accomplish my goal. My goal is to have more informed discussion and decision making at the time of the agenda.
Tim, could you make some comments?
Let me talk for a moment about AB 992, because it did change the landscape in this area quite a bit in January of 2021. For a long time, it was ambiguous whether or not the Brown Act even governed the use of social media or internet discussion fora by elected officials who were members of Brown Act bodies. And the concern was that it did. Impliedly, it said that you couldn't use any device to communicate amongst yourselves as members of the Brown Act body. And that would include posting on Facebook, tweeting, having a blog. And yet, as I'm sure you know, a number of elected officials, local and otherwise, maintained a social media presence to communicate to their own constituents and to members of the public what their opinions were, so that people could decide whether or not they wanted to support that position or not. So it's always been a balance between what communications are projected toward the public to inform them about what your likely vote is going to be and whether they should contact you to persuade you otherwise, and what communications are your effort to persuade your fellow board members. And the latter was always a concern because it wasn't clear that the Brown Act let elected officials post their own thoughts and opinions on social media if it was possible that a board member might see their thoughts. And by that means, in a non-public setting, and I recognize that everybody thinks that it's more transparent to have something posted on the internet than it is to have it in a public meeting, but the Brown Act provides otherwise. To say that I'm projecting this to the public, but also other members of the body might read it and be persuaded by it as well. So we had this long period of time where social media existed and it was neither legalized nor expressly forbidden by the Brown Act. Well, in 2020, Kevin Mullen carried legislation that was going to clarify this to say, no, it's absolutely okay for a member of an elected board to post their thoughts and impressions about a policy issue on the internet. Absolutely fine to communicate with constituents in that way. And also impliedly, it's okay for board members to read each other's materials on the internet. It's not forbidden to read Twitter and accidentally see that one of your fellow board members has stated their opinion, even though that is a form of deliberation in a non-public setting under the Brown Act. So AB 992 said, because the public benefit of seeing an elected official's thoughts and ideas is so great, let's legalize that. But it didn't just do that. It did another thing as well, which said that now it is forbidden from any board member to directly respond to another board member's public social media posting. And it's been the law for a year. I'm not aware of any published cases that have decided this yet. It probably will be quite a while before we see a published decision that clarifies this. But what does it mean to directly respond? Well, we have some examples in the law. Even clicking like in Facebook or retweeting on Twitter is a direct response that's forbidden by the law now. Even though it used to be the law that you only violated the Brown Act if a majority of members engaged in that online forum. Now, the law giveth the ability to post things on the internet, and then it tooketh away the ability for you to respond on an individual level to something that you saw a fellow board member say in social media. Why is this important to the discussion that you're having? Because the concern that I'm expressing is that if the MCC website is used as the repository for board members' thoughts and impressions about agenda items, and things are posted onto the MCC website, I'm going to have a hard time arguing that the next person to post on the same topic on the MCC website isn't directly responding. Okay, I have a somewhat better time arguing that if one board member has their own blog and posts their thoughts and impressions and opinions there, and another board member has their own blog on a different platform with a different URL, with a different set of topics and priorities, but both members of the MCC, and each of them create a post that's on the same topic, unless they go out of their way to say, my esteemed colleague is dead wrong on the following issues, which I'd like him to address, I have a better argument to make that you're not directly responding to each other. But if I have seriatim, here's Greg's thoughts and impressions and upload of his documents and thoughts on this item, and then a day later, here's Dave's ideas as well, even if it's artfully crafted, not to necessarily create clash and make it clear that the second post is really motivated by the thinking and thoughts and ideas of the first post. Even if we successfully have a conversation where it sounds like it's two ships passing in the night, I'm saying what I think, and my colleague had said what he thinks, but I'm not directly engaging. The fact that it's on the same platform is not a great fact. And it could create a problem where board members have a race to the blog steps after an idea comes up, some issue comes forward, and the first person to post will effectively be able to shut up all the others. And that was my concern about how to utilize the MCC website as the place where this discussion happens, because even though it feels like that's more transparent and public, it doesn't comply with AB 992 if there's a second post. The first post, if it's the last item on the issue, I don't see a Brown Act issue with a board member doing that, because now AB 992 says it's okay to post your thoughts and impressions on a social media platform, and it defines that broadly to mean basically any online service whatsoever, including the MCC website. But I think you probably can understand that other local agency officials tend not to use their public websites for the purpose of discussing policy issues and projecting their thoughts to their constituents. They usually do that on some other platform over which they have greater control. I had other concerns that I expressed to Claire on a call about interaction with the public and what happens when you open a forum, because there are special First Amendment rules that would apply to the MCC website that do not apply to blogs that are maintained in a private capacity by members of the MCC. There's more freedom to moderate the discussion on websites that you run individually than there is to moderate discussion on the MCC website. But I gather that there isn't a comment function that's utilized in the posting area of the MCC website, so that concern may not really be in play. So my suggestion is that the greatest flexibility to accomplish the idea that Greg is talking about is to maintain a website where you have complete control over what you upload. You don't necessarily have control over whether your fellow board members read your posts, but that's actually not something that necessarily can be managed by this process. Either people will seek out the information or they won't. What I absolutely advise against is setting up a situation where board members are even tempted to respond to each other. Like, you got this wrong, these facts are wrong, you should correct the record. And if somebody's posting something on the MCC website, I think that incentive is going to be extremely strong and difficult to manage. And you're going to wind up having side conversations where the chair is being asked to take something down because it contains factual misinformation, and it looks like the MCC has taken a position on the issue and has, because we can't have refutation. Refutation's off the table because of AB 992, and the first post winds up being the last matter, the last word on the item, creating a very strong incentive to have either serial communications offline or, even worse, online engagement between the board members that violates AB 992. So this is what I'm trying to navigate, and I think that there are solutions. They just may not be, let's use the MCC website itself as the place where this discussion happens.
Understood. What was your point about correspondence, though?
Okay, so it's always been the case that you are constituents of the MCC, and you are free to communicate with each other as constituents of each other, but are subject to the Brown Act, right? So when you were a private citizen before you were elected an elected official, you could contact all the members of the MCC by phone call, by email, text, whatever you wanted to do. The one right that was taken away when you were elected to office was the ability to have private conversations. And when you, there's nothing, there is such a thing as correspondence to the MCC. The citizens can write letters saying, please take up this issue, it's very important, you should take action. I believe that it is not forbidden for you to write a letter to the MCC and then to have a correspondent treated the same as all the other correspondence received by the MCC and provided as part of the agenda packet. I don't have a very clear idea about what administrative burden that imposes. If somebody says, my correspondence consists of 200 pages that I'm going to mail to the mailbox and it needs to be scanned and uploaded, that's something that you all need to get a handle on about that process. But I think that the correspondence section of the most Brown Act bodies' agendas, where you report the correspondence that you've received, you don't read it into the record, you simply say, we got a letter from so-and-so on the following topic, that remains kind of a safe harbor for, you know, how you communicate with the MCC. Different from having a blog post where it's uploaded and the others can't respond because that's an online forum. So in essence, it's a little bit of a, it's a clever way to not have it be an online post that is governed by AB 992.
Michelle?
Yeah, I wanted to ask how the process has happened a couple times in the last year, where a group of 3 people will work on a topic for an upcoming meeting, and then a 4th person will see the letter that's posted and post an alternate letter. That yeah, that seems to violate, in my mind, some of the rules that you just laid out.
It does. the process of writing a letter by committee is a really fraught one. The Brown Act never seemed to authorize that. And yet it's something that is a pretty common modality of business for the MCC. So it's probably, if I were to rank all the questions I've ever been asked by the MCC about anything, it would be, how do we go about this process of collectively writing something that we all agree to? And I don't have great answers, because the answer that I would give is you have to do it at a public meeting where members of the public have equal input on what changes should be made. My suggestion in my conversations with Claire, and I hope they mirror the conversations that I had with you, Michelle, when you were chair, is that having a corresponding secretary who is tasked with writing a letter that states a position, but does not bring back a draft for approval by the entire body, might be the most flexible alternative, because it's the way business used to be done in parliamentary procedure all the time. You know, the secretary is asked to send a letter to the Board of Supervisors expressing support for the following legislation or project, or opposition. And then you can state what the grounds are. But the wordsmithing, this bringing back drafts and proposing drafts, that needs to happen in a public meeting, and it should be daylighted at a public meeting and not sent by email to everybody for their consideration in advance of the meeting, because of this rule that I'm talking about.
Lynn?
I'm going to take my hand down. I think he's covering it in general, and we have a specific in mind for reference, so we sort of have a context.
Dave?
So Michelle asked the question I was going to ask, but the answer raises a follow-up question because it doesn't quite address something. It is okay for a council member to write a letter, and when we are on that agenda item, say, I want to propose an amendment to the letter that's already on the agenda, and it is in fact an entirely different letter, because that is on the agenda item, it is on task. Would you agree with that or disagree? And I, ignoring the corresponding, just looking at the way MCC does stuff and strict Brown Act.
This is very much like a law school seminar, advanced topics in Brown Act compliance, but I love it. There was a recent case where something like that came about, where a development agreement that had been approved by the Planning Commission was brought to the Board of Supervisors of a county with responsibility for some of the Tahoe Basin. So obviously a very contentious land use issue. And there was an amendment to the development agreement that was made after the Planning Commission took its action, but before the Board of Supervisors took its action. And the court basically said that the way in which you phrase the agenda item matters. In that case, the agenda said, consideration of the Board of Supervisors to approve the development agreement recommended by the Planning Commission. And the Court of Appeal found that approving any development agreement different from the one that was identified in the language of the agenda was beyond the power of the body to do, because the public would have reasonably read the agenda to mean, shall we approve the development agreement that was approved by the Planning Commission? It has since been changed, so if you approve something different, it's outside the scope of the agenda. I'll tell you, I was a bit surprised by that outcome. I thought it was a little bit impractical for the Court of Appeal to do, but it is the law. So how much flexibility and leeway you have to make edits is really kind of driven by, one, how you phrase the agenda item, whether you gave yourself
Dirt? Yeah. Okay.
How much flexibility you chose to give yourself in the agenda item to make those edits, and then what your process was for daylighting those edits, which sometimes matters, because you could get somebody coming forward the night before the meeting and saying, here's a complete rewrite, and that really didn't provide adequate notice to members of the public that you could do a 180 on one of the issues and be persuaded at the meeting not to send the letter that was provided in draft form with the agenda packet, but send a letter that was effectively entirely new. I can give you some general guidance about what I would do if I was faced with that situation. It's always better to say, if you're bringing something forward as a new item, you can basically say, vote no on tonight's item and agendize your draft letter for a future board item. But I recognize that timelines don't always allow that. And in the case that I think we're talking about, the timelines wouldn't have allowed that. So it does sometimes come down to a gut check about whether or not you really feel that the public was adequately informed that it was a possibility that a completely different written document was going to be approved by the council for sending that night, and to try your best to prevent that from presenting itself as the difficult choice you have to make, particularly under a time frame.
So amendments are okay. Alternate letters depends exactly on the wording of the agenda item. And we were either sloppy or clever or whatever, because that particular agenda item said approval of letter, not a letter, not the letter.
Right. And you know, again, I would really encourage you to set up a process by which it becomes less of a high stakes controversy what changes are made to the letter. And I think that does ultimately mean trying to get out of the habit of thinking that every word of the letter is something that needs to be approved by the MCC. You can delegate authority to one of your members to write a letter and trust that they will faithfully write a document that reflects the MCC's position. But you know, if it does come down to wordsmithing, you're going to basically multiply your Brown Act issues.
I don't understand how the public gets to
Let me-
comment.
Hold on, I'm not quite
Wait a
finished
second.
with my question. So historically, I'd say anywhere from 10 to 20% of MCC letters get amendments that are not something just like a trivial typo or word left out or something like that. So the MCC process for many, many years has been amend sometimes substantially in meetings. So you could say the expectation is that's on the table, but that doesn't mean people who don't attend every MCC meeting would know that. So sounds like we need to have a group of the MCC, 3 people or less, develop a policy on this for the time critical ones. We have had many other cases that were not time critical, where we followed, you know, one meeting we discussed what we wanted, the next meeting we had the letter, and there were very, very seldom significant changes to those letters.
Well, it sounds like there's, if I'm thinking about what are our options for how to write letters? One is what we're doing now. And I think we've developed kind of a really bad habit of feeling like we do need to edit these things in the meetings. And I would like to see us not do that as much as we do. I don't think it's necessary, but we can basically continue what we're doing. The other option is to, as you say, debate what the position of the MCC should be, make decisions on it, and then delegate it to someone who writes it and sends it, and we never see it again. And the third option is one that I think David proposed, where a letter is written and posted, and other members of the MCC are invited to send suggestions to the writer of the letter only. And I think we discussed that when we talked earlier, but that seems like the only other option that I can think of as to how to write these things.
Yeah, and to be really clear, this is a case where it's a one-way information flow. The receiver does not respond.
I'm still not a fan of option 3. It essentially is, it is deliberation. Even if it is a one-way information flow. And again, I recognize that you can point to examples where that happens when the communication is to a staff member, but you don't have that. And so all of your communications are to your fellow board members, and it's harder for me to find a reason why it's okay for all of you to talk to one of you about an agenda item. So my strong preference, I'll stop short of saying it's my recommendation and advice, but I believe that if you can get to option 2 that Claire pointed out, where you take action at the policy level, not at the word level, whenever possible, gives you the greatest flexibility to be agile in responding to issues as they come up. And if it turns out that somebody is better in the group at faithfully recording what the consensus of the MCC was and summarizing it in writing, that person will be a great choice for doing that in the future as well. I've observed in my conversations with Claire that sometimes I've seen the task of writing the letter fall to the person that feels most strongly about the issue. And I know that that is one of the strengths of the MCC, is it allows people who have an interest in a community issue to be responsible for communicating the MCC's position. That also is part of the energy behind the problem that we're talking about. If the person that feels most passionately about the issue is the one writing the letter, they may oversell the MCC's position. And when it comes back for review, the rest of the council might say, well, I feel like you juiced that a little bit, or that's a little further than I would have gone. But again, that's more a political question than it is a legal one. I just would recommend that you minimize the number of circumstances in which you've created a high stakes controversy over a discussion about the wording of a letter that was sent, and then have an email trail of how you got there, because that is deliberation. If the exact phrasing of the letter is the business of the council, then the discussions that you have about the phrasing are covered by the Brown Act.
If we were to choose one of these options for our letters, how would we make that our standard? Would we need to vote on it? How does this actually technically take place? That let's say we decide we're going to delegate the actual writing to one person after we decide on the policy. Would this go, how does this happen?
I think you should reserve the ability to choose which mode is best for a given situation. As Dave said, not everything is time sensitive, but some things are. And it may have an effect on which path you choose. But I would suggest that if an item of business is being brought forward by a council member and they have a clear idea about what they want, it's a good idea to come to the meeting with an action item that says, I propose that we send a letter that makes the following points, and then see whether or not there is council consensus or a majority to give that direction, and then decide who to give the direction to actually write the letter. And hopefully it'll be a one-touch thing, much as with organizational efficiency. Number of times you touch an item of mail, ingoing or outgoing, should be kept at a minimum, and that includes the outgoing stuff.
So I guess at that point, if in the scenario that you're describing, the decision could be made to say, Michelle, please write this letter and send it, and we never see it again. Or a decision could be made to say, could the three of you put together a letter to bring to the next meeting?
You would see it again as a report of correspondence sent. And if there were an issue where someone said, I really don't feel that captured what we were trying to say, you could have a discussion about that. But really the action would be final, and we give direction to this member to write a letter that summarizes our position. I can't necessarily foresee 100% success all the time, but if you wanted to reduce the agony of drafts being returned, this would solve that problem, and also protect you from wanting everybody give their line edits in a Google Doc to the writer, which again is something I have qualms about.
Claire, I'd like to bring up a point that there are options here that we did not exercise. I mean, one is the obvious: if we put it on the agenda at a sooner time, we wouldn't have had the time crunch. And there was holidays and other things. The second is we could have scheduled a special meeting to take that up separately. And an issue as critical as this, I believe we have a responsibility to do something like that. So, but we did not elect to take that path, but we could in the future.
And one of our difficulties is without any staff, it's the people writing the letter who are almost always the ones doing the research. And that undoubtedly colors the letter. And when it's time critical, we wind up with people doing different sets of research or different views of what the research topic is. So for this in this particular meeting, we received over 200 pieces of email. I would say 85% or more were were from 2 letter writing campaigns, but still they had significant differences in them sometimes. So postponing it would have meant all those people had to attend again, but we could have done a special meeting and still been in time to hit the planning commission deadline. It sounds to me like with what you've given us and what we've talked about today, we all need to go away and think about this and then schedule an agenda item to develop a process and a policy and a clear understanding of what the limits are.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that. My bias would be that regardless of what we do, we should try to minimize the amount of small edits or big edits that we do during meetings. The wordsmithing, as Tim refers to it, as is less important than the policy.
And that was an
We have a
informal
case.
policy in the past, but we've wandered from it significantly.
Yeah. No, we tried to do that, and I mean, this is like maybe a once a year, once every other year incident, but it does occur. So
Well,
That's
we've gotten
why-
into the habit of doing a lot more editing in meetings than we used to, and I think it's boring to the audience, and I'm not sure it contributes that much, whether we use a certain word or a different one. The policy is what we should be focusing on. We are running a little bit over time. If people are willing to stay a little bit longer, if there's something else that someone wants to bring up on their policies and procedures that we could deal with quickly.
I just want to make an announcement. It's my goal by Monday end of day to have minutes both for our last regular meeting and this meeting as drafts to consider. And in some ways, those will frame some concerns to look at. So, and if people want to comment prior to the meeting on the minutes, just respond directly to me.
You were wanting to propose some changes to how we do the minutes, I think, Len. Did you want to bring that up now?
No, instead it'll be operational. There may be certain changes noted or documented there as drafts. And we can discuss it at the meeting, but I'll try to get them out in advance so that people may also send comments to me.
Okay.
And basically the meetings we've had provide good ground to consider this.
Okay, so I guess we'll wait and see
Correct.
what's coming. Okay. I think we've at least dealt with at least a little bit everything that was on my list. I don't know if anyone has other things, but let me just clarify, Tim. If after this meeting, one of us wants to go out, set up our own website and put a link to it, can we do that? Or are you still thinking?
No. Oh, no, that's legal now. You can do that now. You don't need to wait for my say so. As I said, the Brown Act actually strongly promotes communications that connect elected officials to their constituents. So you're very free to do that. It's when you find yourself addressing your fellow board members and using a forum that encourages them to engage with you outside of a public meeting that there's now a problem.
Yeah.
So feel free to create a blog. I think that's actually
Yeah.
really a value added measure for constituent engagement and involvement in today's day and age.
A blog
So-
off the MCC website.
Right. So Tim, we have a local independent paper news source, if you will, that fosters promotion of website opinions. Some of our council members use it. And what you're saying in effect is council members would be free to use that more than one on the same issue, so long as they stick to their particular point of view.
Awfully hard to say you're not influenced by the first posting.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question, because we actually.
Yeah, give me the best. Please give me the best argument to make that you were talking to your constituents and not to each other. Like if you start out your blog post by saying, I'm surrounded by complete idiots on the MCC, then it will be hard for me to say that what you were doing was addressing your constituents and not your fellow board members. And I recognize that's not really the tone that we're most concerned about. It's the, for example, an edge case would be someone saying, at the last board meeting, several people made the following points, boom, boom, boom. And I believe the following, okay? It's using that refutation model of set up the points that were made by other members of the MCC and refute them, that's really supposed to happen in a public meeting and not on a blog post.
So in particular, if a member wrote on a particular topic, they could go in as much detail as they want, but they should never make any reference to comments from the MCC meeting itself or MCC members.
It would be best if you want to talk about things that the public said, you're absolutely free to do that. And if you're, providing context about what was discussed, that's fine too. The word in AB 992 is directly respond. That's what's forbidden, directly responding. Now, what does it mean to directly respond as opposed to indirectly respond? I'd rather not litigate that because I could see someone say this was an offline conversation amongst the board members. They just were giving it the veneer of public discussion in their blog posts, but they were clearly back and forth responding to each other. So in other words, I don't want you to be tied up in knots about, I don't feel like I can say what I need to say, but please don't go out of your way to say, my fellow council members have the problem by the wrong handle, and here's the way that they should be thinking about it. Instead say, here's what I think and I believe based on the research that I'm doing. And when members of the public say their positions, this is what I agree with and this is what I don't agree with. You're free to do that. The First Amendment still applies to all of your discussions about policy issues, just as it did before. But again, just give me enough daylight that no one can say that you were responding.
So it'd be wise not to say that at a recent MCC meeting, the MCC blah, blah, blah. Just drop all of that and
Maybe,
give what
yeah.
you think.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, that
thank
does
you.
give me more daylight, maybe more than I need, but that's a lot of daylight.
Okay. Thank you all. Anything else that we need to do before we break up? If not, we have motion to adjourn.
Movement to
moved.
adjourn. Greg second. Well, Greg moved. Jill second.
Thank you,
Jill,
Tim.
Thank
Jill?
you. Have a good weekend.
Yes.
motion to adjourn. Yes.
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
myself, yes. We're adjourned 7-0.
See you Wednesday.
Good effort, Claire. Bye-bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Recording.